Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Talking TV with my mum, the weekly Geek-Dom Roundup review show where we talk about various geek/genre TV and give our take on them, our review, and have a bit of a discussion. We've been away for quite some time for various reasons, but we are now back just in time for the lead up to Christmas. So apologies for the radio silence. Apologies for those of you that enjoy listening to us on a weekly basis, but we've returned now and we're going to try and bring you up to speed on key points of things, as well as talking about the past week's episodes that have been on, and we'll sprinkle a few extra bits and bobs, honourable mentions and things in there along the way. So top of the show, usual stuff. If you enjoy today's podcast, please hit the thumbs up button and let us know that you enjoyed it. That would be greatly appreciated. And also leave your comments down below and we'll be going through them in the following podcast and responding and giving you mentions and stuff. So please go ahead and interact with us. And also subscribe to the channel. If you haven't done so yet, if you're new here or if you just haven't made that commitment, please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell so you stay notified, all of that stuff that you get conditioned and told to do on YouTube. Please do that. That would be amazing. And if you go in the description box, there's a whole bunch of links in there. I'll mention them a bit more at the end, but there's lots of links there for donation mediums and merch shops. If you want to represent the Kingdom of Geeks, there's things you can wear. And currently, at time of recording, I've got a sale going on. So if you visit the merch shop and you use the code HOLIDAY10, all in capitals, you'll get a discount off anything you buy. And also there's the timestamp. So if you do want to jump around, which I hope that you would listen to the whole thing, but if you want to jump to specific sections, then the timestamps are there to allow you to do that. That's all the housekeeping. Let me introduce my co-host. Hello there, Mum. Welcome back.
Hello, welcome back to you too. Hello, everybody. We're back.
We're back. Yeah, so it's been a minute. We've had obviously lots of things, various scheduling issues and illnesses and technical problems and all sorts.
It's been mad considering we've had so much excitement going on the programs and we couldn't actually tell you about it. Which is so annoying, but Tom's going to give you a lowdown on all that in a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been frustrating to bear, hasn't it?
Yeah, very. I mean, we've gone to try and do it a few weeks, haven't we, where we've sort of tried to get up and running and then things just haven't worked. So that's been annoying. And then, like I said, there's, I was ill and you've not been great a few times and we've had clashes of scheduling and all sorts of stuff. So it's just been one thing after another for the last 6 weeks or so, however long it's been.
Crazy. But hopefully, because you haven't heard us for a while, you'll be super excited and be back on board as soon as you hear this one. So.
Yes, exactly. We're hoping to get lots of enthusiastic comments of people being very happy that we're back.
Yes.
Oh dear.
What you're saying is absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Yes, exactly. I thought you were going to say it the other way around there and say absence makes the fart grow Honda.
Now, son. This is a family show.
Start as we mean to go on. No. We can't be a family show because I don't want that to have an effect on my channel.
Oh, sorry.
Something I haven't really discussed with you, I don't think, but there's a lot of people out there who'll be aware of. There's a lot of stuff going on with YouTube at the moment about the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA, and how lots and lots of YouTubers are very stressed and worried about their channels because of the thing to do with fines and things. If it's found that you're putting stuff out that's not exactly family friendly and then children come across it, then you could face fines and all of this kind of thing.
So do you have to put this program is not suitable for young children on at the beginning of your program?
No, because the reason being is that a lot of people have got up in arms about all of this and a lot of people have got really stressed. Now, to be fair, at the present time anyway, I mean, this could change, but at present, I've done a lot of research into this. I've done a lot of reading. I've gone into a lot of the legalese and a lot of the ins and outs. It's mostly it's an American issue. It's the people that are in the States, because it's the FTC, which is an American governing body. This is an American, a US legislative thing, like a law. They don't have jurisdiction outside of their boundaries. It's like they can't levy fines and things to people that aren't in the US because it's a US law.
Yeah.
It would be like us, like a law in this country and saying, oh, and this will affect people in other countries. It's like, no, that, you know, unless an agreement is made between the different countries' governments to have some kind of umbrella policy, then legally the people, you know, from whatever country, they can't enforce any kind of legal things on a different country. That's not how laws work.
But don't they have a thing called a kids YouTube anyway, so that only things for kids is on it?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big argument at the moment. A lot of people are saying, but there's YouTube Kids, you know, and all this kind of stuff. And that, you know, realistically, you're supposed to be, well, in the States anyway, you're supposed to be 13 before you're allowed to create a YouTube channel. So people...
like Facebook used to be.
Yeah,
so
they people...
were 13, were they? About 8 or 9.
Yeah, exactly. So people under the age of 13 aren't really supposed to be able to get a YouTube channel. But the thing is, a lot of this issue is YouTube's. YouTube got in trouble. They got fined a ridiculously high amount of money because it's all to do with data protection. It's basically they were harvesting data and then using it for adverts and things like that.
All right.
Now, this is the other thing that to put any UK YouTubers and things like that minds at ease. We have had a similar policy in this country since 1998. It's called the Data Protection Act. And in the Data Protection Act, there is actually a clause when it comes to children and children's online safety and advertising and targeted marketing and this, that, and the other. And this is one of the other reasons why when I read into everything, I was like, why are all these like UK and European YouTubers and that getting all stressed about this? Because this law doesn't apply to us. We've had our own set of laws that have governed this kind of thing since 1998.
Oh, right.
You know, so that's the other reason why it's not a cause for concern for those of us on this side of the pond, as they say, because we've had things in place to cover these kind of things for a long time. So, you know, we have our own version of it, and it hasn't had any kind of adverse effect on YouTube or YouTubers or anything like that over this part of the world. So why all of a sudden would it just because of an American law being passed? It's an American law that is restricted to American soil, that is restricted to American citizens, which is restricted to American YouTubers. It's not something that can be governed globally, like I said, unless they were to come up with some kind of shared agreement that they worked in with other countries around the world. So sorry for all of you US YouTubers out there that you've potentially got to deal with this minefield, because there's still a lot of unknowns about it, and there's lots of things changing almost on a daily basis. There's another thing that's come out now to say about mixed media channels, you know, like suitable for all, family friendly, that kind of thing, that you don't necessarily have to mark your channel as for kids or not for kids. You can have a in between to say, well, it's suitable for a mixed age range, but some of it may be like parental guidance required type thing.
Yeah.
Which originally they didn't say that. They didn't sort of make out you could do that. So people were going, oh, my channel's going to get taken down, or I'm going to have to switch it to family friend, like, you know, to kids only. But then there's all these restrictions, kids only. You can't run adverts, so you can't monetize your channel. You can't do promotions. You can't have comments, you know, and all this kind of stuff. So people were saying, oh, all these channels are going to die, you know, like all these Minecraft channels and stuff that are targeted at kids are going to go down the toilet because they're not going to be able to advertise their channels or have any interactions. Their channels are going to disappear. Doesn't bother me. I hate Minecraft. Sorry, unpopular opinion. Don't give me any backlash in the comments. That's my opinion and I'm sticking to it. It's not a game. It's not a computer game. I understand some people enjoy it, but it's not what
Lego.
It's virtual Lego. It's virtual Lego is what it is. So the whole cult of Minecraft thing, you know, if there's a few less channels taking up space on YouTube, then that's not going to upset me.
Make your mind, why don't you, Dom?
Yes, exactly. Well, you know, I know obviously there's people within our own family that are fans of Minecraft and stuff. So you know, and I've always been honest. But I'm just saying, you know, this is not just targeted at other people. You know, I'll say this to family members that are fans of this game.
It's close to home.
Yeah. So, you know, it's not my cup of tea. I know some people like it, but you know, I personally wouldn't be that upset if some channels that just do Minecraft stuff disappeared. You know, I think a cull is needed. But yeah, anyway. So that's a little thing anyway. That was tied into you saying about us getting in trouble or whatever. But yeah, like I said, for us, it's not really something that's going to affect us because we're in a completely different country, governed by a completely different set of laws and rules and things like that.
And we're pretty well behaved to a point.
Yeah, we only drop the odd swearing and stuff like that. But like my channel has never been targeted at kids. My channel has always been a mixed age range, because there's some of the things on there that are quite violent and they're quite bloody, and I do drop the occasional F-bomb and things like that. Yeah, the Star Wars podcast, which is one of the things I did do in our break, was the Star Wars podcast. Those of you, if you haven't listened to it yet, go and listen to it. It was really good fun. There was a lot of swearing in that because, it was just honest opinions and stuff. And there was a lot of bad language, but it was just in conversational ways. But then equally, I'll do things like Kingdom Hearts and I'll do things like Hollow Knight and stuff, which are more, kids could watch them without any problems. The Sonic the Hedgehog series I did, Sonic Mania, that's suitable for children. But I've never marketed myself.
Go back down to the parents keeping an eye on what the kids watching doing anyway, isn't it, really?
But I've never gone out of my way to market my channel as a for kids channel. It's like it's family, it's all age range content. It's like there's a bit of stuff in here that would be suitable for my daughter to watch and other people's kids to watch, but equally there's things on here that I wouldn't want her to watch, so it's just a case of govern your children, keep an eye on what they're watching. If you don't want them to watch stuff with blood and swearing and stuff like that, then that's on you, that's not on me.
That's it.
My job isn't to parent your children. My job is to try and entertain people, and that requires me doing a range of different things. I'm not a one-dimensional channel that just does, for example, Minecraft videos. I don't just do one thing. I do a variety of things, and as a result, the variety of things means a variety of age ranges.
Yeah, indeed.
It's simple as that. But yeah, anyway, that's a whole. That could be a whole podcast on its own. But yeah, it is a thing that's affecting a lot of people at the moment, and a lot of viewers might be aware of it as well because they've probably seen lots of videos on it. So it's a topic that, although it's a topic that affects YouTubers more, it is also something that potentially affects the consumers of those videos, the people watching. So
yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, back to the actual geeky stuff. So we've been watching a whole bunch of stuff that we're going to give some honourable mentions to. Now, we won't be reviewing them, and I'm sorry if you're disappointed to hear this when we mention some of the shows, but there's only so much time in the day. There's only so long we can run these podcasts for. So, and some of these things started when we'd already got our plans for what we were going to be doing and things like that. So we haven't included them. But yeah, we've been really enjoying BBC stuff. So we've had two great shows have been on the BBC recently, haven't they?
Yes.
So we've had the short one, which is nearly finished. We've got the final one this Sunday. Well, at time of recording, it's Sunday. So if you're listening to this on Sunday, tonight, the final part of the War of the Worlds mini-series that they've done.
Oh, that's so good.
And it's been really good, hasn't it? Because they've taken it back to the original, like the actual original H.G. Wells War of the Worlds, where it's set in like Victorian times or whatever it is. And no, it's not Victorian times, is it? It's World War One era.
Yeah, it's quite
like the early 1900s, anyway, isn't it?
Yeah. Makes it so more authentic as well.
And it's just been great. I mean, they've added some new elements in. I mean, there's some bits that I wasn't familiar with. Knowing the story and obviously loving the Jeff Wayne War of the Worlds musical and stuff, which I will say, one thing I'm disappointed about, I'm disappointed they couldn't make some kind of agreement with him, because after I watched the first episode, obviously it ended on a bit of a cliffhanger. It went to the credits and I was waiting for the dun 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 dun.
Yeah, they should have had the music. Dun.
Yeah, I was just like, I really wanted them to have the.
Maybe he's going to have it at the end.
What, in the very last episode? Oh, maybe, yeah.
Because that's classic, that music.
It's like the bit in the episode where they were talking in the first episode and they were on about something coming from Mars, and then I think it was Robert Carlyle, and he said the chances of anything coming from Mars are, well, they're a million to one. And I was like singing it. I was like, there's a million.
But still they come.
Yeah. Dun, 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 dun. Oh God, it's so good.
It's
But
very
yes,
good.
it's really good. It's so well acted.
Yeah, and it's short series, so it's
Yeah,
good.
three episodes. Definitely watch it if you haven't seen it. Episode 1 does play out a little bit like, I mean, Zoe's take on it. She said it was a bit like Downton Abbey. I suppose I could see that with the whole like, oh, yeah, he's a married man and he's shacked up with another woman that's not his wife and all of this kind, oh, it's not proper. But I mean, that's how it was back in those days anyway.
Yeah.
That's not a concept that's purely Downton Abbey, but I kind of could see, where she was coming from with some of the dialogue and some of the focus of the story was a lot on this kind of scandalous relationship. But then you had all of the Mars stuff and the aliens and things like that as well. And then that's just developed further. And I just can't wait until the next, the final episode to see the resolution of it all.
Yeah.
I won't go into the bit that I mentioned, that there was new stuff in there that I'm not familiar with because I don't want to spoil it for people that haven't watched it.
Yeah, let them look at it and see what they think.
Yeah. But yeah, that's really good. And then preceding that on a Sunday night on BBC One, we also have His Dark Materials, which is awesome.
Very, very, very good.
So good. I don't think that they've got it in the States yet. So those of you in the States, you might be familiar with the fact that this series exists, but I don't think you guys have got it yet. I think it might be going on. Because I'm trying to think it is BBC in conjunction with like HBO or something. I'm sure it is. It's one of the it's been made in conjunction with an American network.
Oh, has it?
So it's going to be airing on an American network.
Yeah.
But I don't think it started over there yet, but it's so good.
It is.
And because you didn't know anything about it really, did you? I mean, I knew because I've read all the books, so I'm very familiar with the story. And then I watched the film they brought out years ago, which was rubbish. So then when I started seeing all the adverts for this, and I was like, oh, I'm really excited because hopefully they're going to tell the story properly this time. And because it's a series, they'll have a lot longer to tell it rather than trying to condense it into 2 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
And they've done a great job, and we've got like a good cast. There's a lot of famous faces in it.
Famous faces in it, aren't there?
The CGI effects are brilliant.
It's so clever. It's brilliant. It's so Moorish.
Yes, and for us, it's great as well because a lot of it is set in Oxford. So getting to see a lot of places familiar to us has been very cool.
Yes.
I found it ever so funny, like the other week when we saw Queen Street and no, not Queen Street, St Aldate's with all of the buses.
Yes.
And I was like, there's a Blackbird Leys bus, there's a Headington bus. It's so funny.
I thought that was really bizarre. I was thinking, that's quite modern.
Yeah.
Because I thought those buses wouldn't have been around years and years. So it's like, what timeline is this? That's what amazed me. Is like, yeah, JR.
Yeah.
John Radcliffe. And then it's like, ooh. That was really clever. I like that.
So it's very cool. It's very cool for people from Oxford. It's pretty cool to see these familiar sites on a program. I mean, I know we've had it. It's not unfamiliar. Oxford's been in a lot of things over the years.
Programs, isn't it? Yeah.
But it just, again, like especially modern Oxford, and see, because I don't think there's been modern Oxford stuff since Inspector Morse.
There hasn't been modern Oxford since The Apprentice the other week.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking something that's got a bit of a wider, because I think Inspector Morse is aired in other countries as well.
Yes.
Whereas other countries have their own version of The Apprentice. They don't get the UK version.
Yes.
But yes, The Apprentice went to Oxford a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, I don't think it's since Morse, because when they did like Lewis and Endeavour and stuff, that was set in the past. So that was older Oxford.
Yeah.
Whereas modern Oxford was in Inspector Morse.
That's right, yeah.
Don't really think we've seen much. Because a lot of the other stuff like Harry Potter and things like that has used a lot of Oxford, again, it's set it's not obviously not in the past. Harry Potter's modern, but it's kind of in a weird, you're never really sure what era it's kind of set in because of the mixture of the magical world and the real world and stuff.
Yeah.
Plus the stuff they used, a lot of the stuff they used for Oxford was actually supposed to represent a lot of the wizarding places.
Well, yeah, and
rather than the real places.
Things have used Oxford, but they don't actually say it's Oxford. They just use particular historic places just because it's a really great building to use. They never actually specify where it is, don't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was but it's very good, yes.
Very, very good. If you're a fan of the Philip Pullman novels and you would disenfranchised with the movie. Fear not, this series puts everything to rights. It's very well paced, very well scripted. The characters are great. The actors that are in it. There's a lot of people that are from other geeky things, TV shows. I mean, there's a guy in there from Game of Thrones. The main girl that's in it, that's Lyra. She was in the final Wolverine movie, Logan. So you've got other people that are from other geek genre things. James McAvoy obviously was in X-Men. He's also been in lots of other things. The M. Night Shyamalan movies like Switch and things like that. He's been in a lot of sort of fantasy things. So there's a lot of people that are from this world of TV and movies that are in this
you look at it and you go, oh, I recognise that person. I recognise.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know what they're out of, you Google them and go, that's who they are. But they're very familiar facial.
The funny thing, I didn't talk to you about this, actually. I've spoken to a few other people about this, but I didn't speak to you specifically. So last Sunday on both Dark Materials and War of the Worlds, the actor that played Dudley Dursley in the Harry Potter films, so his cousin, the horrible, fat, spoilt kid that was his cousin that was horrible to him all the time.
Yes.
He was in War of the Worlds and his Dark Materials. So he was the guy in his Dark Materials that, little bit of a spoiler here, but got his face trampled by the polar bear.
Okay, yes.
And he was also the young soldier that...
I was working with that chap.
Yeah, that it's Rafe Spall, yeah, isn't it? Timothy Spall's son. The one that he met, the young soldier he met. So he was the same actor, obviously, was in the 2 different shows on the same night.
Wow. And we had the guy out of American Horror Story in it.
Yes, yeah, you pointed that out. I didn't spot that, but you spotted the guy from from the Freak Show one, yeah. So, yeah, very good. Definitely recommend it. It's well worth your time. I would definitely say go and watch it if you can get the opportunity, and if you're waiting for it to come on your network, if you're in the US or whatever, I'm sure it's coming to something soon. So just keep an eye out. But yeah, very, very good. So there's those 2. And we've also been enjoying the 2nd season of Castle Rock, which has been really, really good. Some brilliant television in that show. Really good show. Those unfamiliar, obviously Castle Rock is like an anthology series set within the world of Stephen King. So it's like all the Stephen King things all exist within the same universe. And this series has got connections to... There's a little bit of Shawshank, because they mention Shawshank Prison every so often, but that featured heavily more in the 1st season. But a lot of it is based around Misery, around the movie Misery. And it's kind of serves as a prequel, because the character Annie Wilkes, who was played by Kathy Bates in the film, in this series, she's a younger woman.
Yes.
So we're getting to see what shaped her and how she became the character that we come to know in the Misery movie. There's also references to Salem's Lot, and there's some very odd stuff going on, some very weird, supernatural, spooky things happening in this town. So, it's really good, isn't it? And the woman that they got to play Annie Wilkes is fantastic.
Yeah.
Especially the episode from the other week when we got her origin story.
Oh, that was brilliant, yeah. So now we know how she got where she got.
Yeah, it was one of the best paced, one of the best written, in my opinion, hours of television that I've watched in a long time. At the end of that episode, I just said to Zoe, I was just like, that was phenomenal. That was just so well done. Such a compelling, really well acted, really dramatic hour of TV. So good.
It was very good.
So yeah, we're having a lot of fun watching that, aren't we?
We are.
And again, some familiar faces in it. I mean, I find it interesting that Tim Robbins is in it, because again, connection to Stephen King, because he was Andy Dufresne. Andy was a simple man. In the Shawshank Redemption, me doing my worst Morgan Freeman impression there. But yeah, he was Andy Dufresne in the Shawshank Redemption, and now he's playing a completely separate character in Castle Rock. But that's cool, and there's some other familiar faces that pop up here and there in the show as well. And alongside that, we're also watching another comic book related TV show, which again, you knew nothing about until I told you about it.
No.
And you've really, really enjoyed it, haven't you? Which is Watchmen.
Love it. Absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
as it's gone on as well, it's like, oh, I'm glad in a way I didn't know nothing about it, because I like going in to watch a program that I don't know anything about. I know you said there was a film and stuff like that, but I thought, no, I'm liking it as it is now. So maybe after I've watched the season, I go, oh, watch the film now. So I'm just so invested in the series. I don't want it to I start thinking other things of it. I want to just see it as it is now.
What's good about this as well for other people, for people listening, is that, like you said, you haven't seen the film. So, but you were still able to watch the show and get into the show without having that prior background. Yes. So if there's anyone else out there that's kind of maybe held off on Watchmen because they're like, oh, it's connected to that film that I never saw, I won't watch it. You're the proof in the pudding right there that you don't need to have watched the film to be able to watch the series.
No, because it explains it as you go along, so you get the feel for it.
I mean, it's that thing. It's like, if you have seen the film, like I have, then you've got a different perspective on the series. You have a deeper understanding. You maybe understand the little mentions or the little nods to past events, because you go, oh, that was what happened in the film, or that character was from the film. But it's not required. It's not, even though it is a sequel, it is a follow-up to the movie. It's been done in such a way that it's telling its own story.
Yeah.
And also introducing some of these concepts into the show, so that if you're not familiar with the movie, you're not going to be missing out on anything.
No, because obviously I'd watched a couple of episodes before I realised there was a film. I thought I would have had to stop watching it and go, right, I've watched all the film first.
Yeah.
And then start watching it again from the beginning. I thought there was no point. Now I started watching it without any other information. It was easier just to keep watching it, and it's been brilliant. I love it.
Yeah.
I usually download it on my phone and watch it in my break at work. So, cool.
Yes, it's so good. And it's it's cool as well, because obviously it's comic book, it's superhero-esque, but it's not, it is fantastical in a lot of ways, because there are a lot of weird elements, but it's not your typical superhero show. It's not, for those unfamiliar, it's not like people with powers, flying around and shooting things out of their hands and, this, that, and the other. It's mostly almost just like vigilante. It's a bit more like Arrow in that way, in that there's a lot more people that they're just like Batman or whatever. They're well trained, they have gadgets, and they're good at fighting. They don't necessarily have superpowers.
But then you have a supernatural side to it.
Yes.
The other part of the story. So
yeah, there's quite a few other fantastical elements to it, but it's not a conventional superhero thing, is it?
No, definitely not.
And it's not conventional either in terms of the tone, because it's very adult. It's very much a grown-up superhero story.
Yeah.
As opposed to sort of like, oh, this is for kids because it's superheroes. It's like, no, it's not.
Definitely not. Put it out there now. Don't let your kids watch it.
But again, when you talk about, like we're saying about Castle Rock and that Annie Wilkes origin story, again, I know you and me haven't spoken about this individually yet, but I just want to give it a mention that this week's episode, again, was one of the so well crafted hours, or well, it was actually longer than an hour because it was a feature length episode, but another origin story. Getting to find out about, and I'll keep it within like you and me know what we're talking about, and people that have watched it will know what we're talking about. But the backstory of the grandfather,
yes,
it was just great. I was just like, this is brilliant. And like the visual effects they used and the clever backwards and forwardsing and how different scenes just kind of blended into the next scene. And it was great.
Yeah.
And like all the realizations of stuff when you kind of go, oh, that's why this thing. And that's this thing that we've been seeing is actually all connected to this and all that. Oh my God, it was great. It was so good. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Really, really good episode. So yeah, highly recommend it from both of us. 10 out of 10. Go and watch The Watchmen. Go and watch The Watchmen. Yeah, couldn't recommend it enough, could we?
No, brilliant.
And then that brings us on to our other honourable mention, which, again, you were a little bit skeptical because, as we've discussed in the past when we've talked about Star Wars, you're a purist. You like the original Star Wars and that's it. And so you're a bit like, oh, I don't know. I'm not sure whether I like this or not. And I was like, no, go and check it.
So like kind of Williams off in the karaoke.
Matron. But yeah, I was like, no, give it a go. I reckon you'll really enjoy it. And that was The Mandalorian. And
I love it.
Yeah, there you go. I was going to say, what do you think of it?
Love it.
It's
Absolutely
great.
brilliant. Can't fault it.
So
glad I actually did decide to watch it.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, very, very good.
Yes, and we would definitely recommend people going to watch it. And as obviously you've taken to liking a particular phrase now, Mum, so tell people what they need to go and do. They need to go and watch it because...
They need to go and watch it because I have spoken.
Yes, and in reference to the latest episode, you need to watch it because this is the way. That was another catchphrase from this week's episode, wasn't it? This is the way.
Yes.
Yeah,
I keep
so
saying
good.
That I have spoken at work to my boss.
I have spoken.
Oh, it's really good. Really good.
I was trying to remember the 3 things you said you wanted. Now, I remembered I was talking to Zoe the other night and I said, my mum made me laugh because she said, I really
Christmas
want...
presents.
And you said, you want one of those fish things, the what they call blogs or whatever they're called, those weird things that they rode around on. Yeah. You want and this, sorry if this is spoilers, but it's been out for a few weeks and it's been all over the bloody internet. You want a baby Yoda.
Yes.
Yeah. And what was the third thing?
The dragon off the John Lewis advert.
Oh, that's what it was. I couldn't remember what the third thing was.
Because it looks like me.
There's 2 things, and then I don't think the third thing is a Star Wars thing, but I can't remember what it is that she said she wanted.
It looks like me when I'm smiling.
Is it called Edgar?
I don't know.
The dragon is called Edgar.
I know it's sold out at John Lewis's stores.
John Lewis is a big department store in the UK, by the way, for those of you from not from here. Think of your like Macy's and things like that. It's a big sort of buy anything department store, and every year they run a big
find it on
Christmas
YouTube.
advert. Yeah. Yeah, you will be able to find it on YouTube. They run a big advert.
John Lewis Christmas ad and you'll see it.
And it's like a tradition now. It's like people always wait every year of like, oh, what's the John Lewis Christmas advert going to be this year? And
they're always really good.
Yeah, well, most of the time. There've been a few ropey ones, but my favourite one is still the Star Wars one that they did with the old man on the moon and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I say the Star Wars one. The Star Wars thing was the parody of it because they did the Star Wars parody, but the one with the man on the moon, and then somebody did a Star Wars parody where it was Darth Vader was on the moon and stuff like that. But yeah, that's probably my favorite one. But I do like the Bear and the Bunny one as well, the cartoon one, which was Keen Song, wasn't it? Somewhere Only We Know.
Yeah,
was used in that one. Yeah,
but it's a dragon, and I'm a dragon, so I love the dragon.
Yep.
It's funny, but it's sad and it's funny at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, check it out. Go on YouTube, look it up. John Lewis Christmas advert. If you're outside the UK, anyone in the UK is probably already aware of it because we just get bombarded with them everywhere. There's adverts for the advert.
But yeah, going back to the Mandalorian, very good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We already have our ideas of what's going to happen next, haven't we? Based on what's been happening. So we're considering I don't know what it was about. I'm that invested now. I'm sort of like going, well, I think this, and you're saying you think that, and we can't say too much because we don't want to spoil it.
Yeah,
because it's still pretty new, so hopefully people will still watch it. So
yeah, people that might not have got on board yet, but you need to get on board. Original
Star Wars fan like me, the 1 to 3, it's so good. Forget about all the before and after films and stuff.
Yeah,
you'll love it.
Because obviously, those of you that may not be aware, this series is set in that sort of time period. It's 5 years after the events of Return of the Jedi. So the Empire's been defeated. You know, Darth Vader's gone. The Emperor's gone. They're beginning to build the New Republic, and this series is set in that period between the end of the original movies and obviously there's a 25-year gap or something between the end of Return of the Jedi and 30-year gap, I think, and the new movies. And this is set in that time period. And it's great because it's both familiar and different at the same time. There's enough in there that you're going to go, yes, this is Star Wars. There are recognizable things. There are creatures and devices and weaponry and things that I recognize from the original trilogy. Yeah. But there's also lots of like, we don't know these characters, we don't know this story, you know,
there's a lot of mystery as well, isn't there?
And I mean, like, talk about the mystery. I mean, I was so hyped for this show just based off the trailers and you know, I just thought it was some kind of like weird space spaghetti western, you know, the whole sort of like the man with no name type Clint Eastwood sort of character, which is basically what it is.
It is, yeah.
We had no idea on the story. We didn't know what the story was about because they kept it so under wraps. And it's only at the end of the first episode that you then go, this is what the series is going to be like revolving around. But it's how well they did it. They were able to market and advertise this show without really telling anybody what the story was.
Yeah.
So it was very, very cool. And it was a really good sort of like surprise to get to the ending and then see what the direction was going to be for the show.
And I didn't even see the trailer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you just had what I mentioned to you.
Yeah, right, let's check this out, see what this is all about. What's this hoo-ha all about?
I mean, we talked about it at length on the special Star Wars podcast that I did about the Mandalorian and stuff.
Yeah.
And those of you that have listened to both that podcast and also have started watching The Mandalorian, what's really weird is that I basically predicted content. I came up with a pitch because we did a bit at the end where we were like doing a, you know, like if you could walk into Disney tomorrow and you could say, here's my pitch for a new Star Wars thing. My one was kind of related in a way to what's been going on in The Mandalorian. And it was like, that's so weird. We recorded that podcast a week and a half or something before, or like a week before it was a week before.
At least a week before, yeah.
Before The Mandalorian came out, nobody knew anything about the story, and then something happens in the story that was kind of related to something that I brought up in that podcast, and I was like, "That's so weird." It's like, did Disney and Lucasfilm bug my house? So yeah, that was really bizarre. Another bizarre thing, talking about Star Wars though, is I've been lucky. So we're talking about the things that have happened in the in-between time. Obviously, we've had all of the technical reasons and stuff why we haven't recorded, but there's also been stuff going on. You know, I've done a separate podcast with a couple of other YouTubers on Star Wars, and I also started a new Star Wars series, which is based off the new game Jedi Fallen Order. And again, I mean, it's so good. It's so exciting. And again, it's so Star Wars. It's so cinematic. It's set again in that same time period. This one is actually set before the events of the original movies, but not so far back as the prequel trilogy. It's kind of in that in-between time between the prequel trilogy and the original series. But it's just, it's so well paced. The story's really good. The voice acting, the character animation. Oh my God. Those of you that have watched it will know quite how excited I get when I'm playing that game, because there's just so much I just get geek out about. So I'm just like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's really, really good. And I was lucky enough, I got gifted that. It was like an early Christmas present type thing from some of my friends that are also YouTubers, or Erratic Ermine. And the connection anyway was that in the podcast we were talking about this, this elevator pitch thing to Disney. And one of the things was about a nature show, like about doing a David Attenborough-esque nature show, but set in the Star Wars galaxy, because there's so much unique flora and fauna and, creatures and things that you see in all of these films that never really get, and they never really get explored. They're just kind of like, oh, here's a weird creature that lives on this planet. But it's like, wouldn't it be great to go and do this, a David Attenborough type show where they go to those planets and they get more in depth
living
and they
with
look
the
at
alien.
Yeah. And it's like, what do they eat? How do they survive? What are their mating rituals? What's their life cycle? All of this kind of like he does with his real nature documentaries. And then on this game, there's a whole load of stuff to do with the flora and fauna. You can scan lots of plants and you can scan lots of the animals and you get information about them and what their diet is and this, that. And again, it was like, that's so weird because it's not quite what we talked about, but it's kind of along those lines of giving us that extra amount of detail into these other things that make up the world of Star Wars beyond the actual, heroes of the story or whatever. So yeah, that was quite funny. But yes, that was a bit of a sort of tangent in relation to Star Wars, but sort of going off of it. Bit of self-promotion for me as well. Well, I'm allowed to. It's my podcast. I can promote myself as much as I like.
My channel.
Yeah. But
I will try
yes,
and check it out then if it's based on more like the
I think you'll. Yeah, again, I think you'll enjoy it.
The original.
The aesthetics and things that happen in it and stuff, it's very good, and it tells its own story. It's all very original, but it's also very familiar at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very good. And I've been trying to do it like a Netflix style TV show. So like at the beginning of every episode, you get a previously on.
Oh.
And I do like a recap thing and oh my God, though, I mean, it's worth it because it seems to be going down well. People seem to be liking it, but the amount of extra work I have to put in going through the episode that I previously recorded and chopping it up into bits to make a previously on like trailer bit to put in the beginning of the next new episode.
It, son, so you have to put the work in.
It's not, but it wasn't my idea. I blame Hero. It was his suggestion. He said, why don't you do it more cinematic? Do it more like a TV show or something. And I was like, that's a really good idea. So he put the idea in my head and then I ran with it. But yeah, so I suppose it's my fault as well because I ran with it. But it's worth it. It's worthwhile doing it. I like it. And like I said, I'm getting a lot of good feedback on it. And it's different. Yeah, it's a bit different for me to do something like that, to have this kind of previously on and then sort of like show some of the key moments from the previous episode rather than me just kind of going, on the previous episode, we did X, Y, and Z things. It's like, this is what here, just visually look at what happened.
Yeah.
Like you would when you're watching
a TV show. Then as well. If you haven't watched it straight away, you don't watch it one after another, you can go, oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then you go straight into it and they go, yeah, know where I am now.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So,
I don't mind previously ons, I just don't like next time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm not. I haven't been doing that. I haven't been doing
I don't like to know what's going to happen the following
to come. Week. Yeah, you always switch off at that point, don't you?
Yes, I don't watch the spoilers.
But yes, Mandalorian, definitely recommend. 10 out of 10. Go and watch it. So good. Really, really enjoyable. It's a shame it's not available in a binge-worthy format because I think it would be very easy to...
Oh, God, I could sit and watch it all then.
Yeah.
In a way, it's good it isn't, because I do tend to do that a lot.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh, I've got nothing to watch now.
Yes, I watched it all already. Now I've got to wait a whole year for it to come back again. At least this way it does pace it a little bit. And it's that anticipation each week. You're looking forward to, I can't wait to see what's going to happen next sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, highly, highly recommend. So there are honourable mentions. They're the things that we are watching and we may touch on from time to time. We may give a little mention and kind of go, oh yeah, last week's episode of this thing was so good.
Yeah, a little bit of an update.
We're not going to be breaking them down into, a full-on review for each one of those things. The dishonourable mention. Oh. So there is another show that's on at the moment that we had originally planned to have in the rotation, but I apologize if there are any people out there that are a fan of this, but we're not going to be covering Batwoman because it's pants. It's just not... It's so wishy-washy relationship drama rubbish that...
I felt sorry for you, really, because you're a fan of it all. And you were going, I'm really excited about Batwoman. And I first episode thought, all right. And then I went, oh, no. And then you were doubting it as well. And I thought, well, you're the one you're a diehard fan. And you're doubting it. And that means my idea of it is obviously right. So I mean, you stopped watching it.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've stopped watching it, haven't you? I mean,
second episode.
I'm still watching it because I'm watching it purely based on the whole, I want to keep an eye on it in case something relevant connected to the other shows, or because Batwoman is going to be part of the crossover. So it's like, I want to try and keep an eye on what's going on in case there's something relevant. And if something relevant does happen on the show, we will talk about it. But generally speaking, we're not going to bother because it hasn't landed very well. I mean, it's leaking viewers. The first episode got a decent amount of viewers, but then subsequent episodes since have just seen a decline in ratings. People are just turning off it because they just don't like it. Because they've rushed a lot of stuff. They introduced the concept of like, here's the bad guy. Oh, we're going to tell you all about the bad guy and who the bad guy is and where the bad guy comes from and what the bad guy's connection is to Batwoman and all that stuff. And they did that all on the get-go. And you go, okay, no slow build there then. And then there's also so much that's just so relationship. It's all based. It's like, okay, fine. She's a lesbian. That's great. That's her character. But it's a superhero show. It should be less about her No, it should be more about her extracurricular activities, as in when she dresses up as Batwoman, as opposed to
her love life.
Who's she going on a date with this week? Oh, is she going to go to this party with this girl? Oh, what's going to happen with this girl? It's like, it's not it. It's supposed to be a superhero show. It's not supposed to be a relationship drama.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, some of them, like in Supergirl, where they touch on the fact that Supergirl's sister's gay and she has a girlfriend. Yeah. It doesn't overrule the whole program.
It's incorporated into the story as opposed to it being a separate
half the program.
It's almost like they were trying to make a real statement in a way. They're kind of going, okay, we've got lesbian characters on our other shows, but we're going to make the focus of this about the fact that she's a lesbian. And it's
which is fine. But
it's fine.
The story isn't about that.
if that's what the show was, if the show was, like the sort of well, I'm trying to think of an equivalent. I mean, like you've got like I know it's a comedy, but like Will and Grace, a lot of that is based around the fact that some of the characters are gay. Queer Eye is purely based around the fact that the characters in that are gay. The show is based around the relationships. The show is based around their sexuality and things like that. Yeah. That's what the show's about. This show is about her being Batwoman and Gotham City and the larger world of superheroes and things like that. Yet so much of each episode seems to be taken up with relationship drama. And it's like, she can be a lesbian and that's fine. Nobody's saying that there's an issue with her being a lesbian. Don't get me wrong, people. I don't want anybody to take me the wrong way and think I'm saying anything's wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's great that there's more representation of different people on television. What I'm saying is I feel like they're kind of, in an effort to try and maybe cynically try and get more gay people to watch the show, they're trying to make it more about that as opposed to anything else.
To the action and the story.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, why should it matter what her sexuality is? If she's gay, that's great. That's her character.
From the get-go, we knew that, didn't we?
Yeah.
We knew that from probably the first episode that she was gay. So we understand that. So if we see her with a girl, we know that's why she's with a girl. But it hasn't got to be all about that.
Yeah, it's like, don't give me 25 minutes of the episode where it's just her going to a dinner party or going, or, something to do with that's related to her being gay. It's like she can be gay and be Batwoman and get on with being Batwoman and make it more about the superhero stories.
It's no different if it was a straight person, the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
All about that. If
it was all about them going out on dinner dates and this, that, and the other, that would bore me.
Up all the time, that would be so boring. You may as well just watch sort of like a rom-com.
And that's some of the stuff that, like, in the past that's annoyed me in, like, shows like Arrow, where they've had those kind of moments where it's like, oh, Oliver and Felicity. And it was like, all that stuff for a long time. It was the whole, Felicity, will they, won't they? I don't care whether they will or won't. I don't care if they go out on a date. I don't care if this, that, and the other. Okay, they got together. That's great. That's brilliant. Okay, they're a couple now. And that maybe them being a couple is going to play into the storylines at some point because she's going to get put in jeopardy and that's going to affect him because it's his personal life. That's fine. But I don't need to see plenty of episodes of like, oh, and Oliver's taking her out for dinner and Oliver's trying to charm her and, this, that, and the other. And it's like, I don't care. I want to see him dress up in his outfit and go around shooting bad guys with arrows. That's what I want to see.
Exactly, because that's the kind of program it is.
If I want relationship stuff, I'll watch The OC or Gossip Girl or Desperate Housewives or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's those kind of programs. This is a superhero program. Make it more about the superheroics and less about their private lives.
There you go. You said it. You heard it here, but
you heard it here first. Damn it. So hopefully people understand where I'm coming from. Like I said, it was not me saying objecting to the homosexuality aspect. The fact that she is, a lesbian. I could care less about that. I'm open-minded. I'm accepting and tolerant of everybody. It's more about how that is more important to the story than the actual story of her being a superhero and being Batwoman.
Yes.
That's what I've got.
That's why we're not reviewing the program.
Yeah, and just because it's poor storytelling, it's just
it's been too predictable,
wishy-washy.
Too much. They give you too much information too soon.
Yeah,
that's how I turned off. That was my reason, because like, oh, who's this? Oh, really? That's who it is. Oh, now I know all this. Yeah. What are they going to do with the rest of the season?
Mm-hmm.
It's too much too soon.
Yeah, I agree.
Information, and I thought, well, I like a little bit of the air of mystery about it, and I thought this is going to be exciting when she finds out. Like, she found out the second episode. Oh, wow. I may as well not watch it anymore. Pretty much. Simple.
And then it's like going onwards from there. It's like, not only does she find out, but then all of the incidental characters find out all the information about, like, both who she is and who this other character is, like, within the first, like, 4 or 5 episodes.
Yeah.
And you kind of go, in most other shows, that would be the long running thing of, like, one day they're going to discover the truth about this person.
They made it too obvious as well that you guess it yourself.
Yeah.
They made it too obvious straight away. You could guess it even without them revealing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not how I like to watch a program. I like to have an air of mystery. I like to maybe think about it possibly. Like, go, oh, maybe it's that person. And we go, I'm really shocked it wasn't that person. Or we called it. You know what I mean? But not that we told it so quick.
Yeah.
So that is what I have to say on that.
So yeah, it's just not. It's not great. It's not. It's maybe some people like it. Maybe some people are like, I like my comic book shows to be more about interpersonal relationships and real life stuff and cliched storytelling. But like, I'm not about that. And especially this franchise. These people that make all these shows have been doing this for years now, and to see this, you go, it's like they've taken a step backwards. It's like, how have they've improved on a lot of the writing and a lot of the pacing and stuff in some of the other shows. Not all of the time. Sometimes the other shows dip a little bit as well, but they've generally improved them as the years have gone by. So you would have expected this show to come out of the gates flying. And instead it seems like a step backwards. And I don't understand why. I don't get it.
So it'd be interesting to see what the episode leading up to the crossover is.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll watch that one. If it's worth watching, tell me.
Yeah, I will do. Mm-hmm. I will. Yeah, I'll let you know. But yeah, so sorry, folks, if you were hoping we were going to cover Batwoman, but we're not. Like I said, if it's anything relevant, so we will talk about it because we've got the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover that starts very soon. And one of the parts of it is a Batwoman episode. So we will be talking about that episode of Batwoman, but purely because it's part of the crossover. In terms of her series in general, we won't be bothering really with it. Now we've talked about the things that we are watching and the honourable mentions and the thing that we're not going to be mentioning. We're going to move on to the actual review stuff now. And we're going to start with The Walking Dead, which annoyingly came back during the time that we've been off. And also annoyingly, it's been really good. Like pretty much every week, it's been really exciting. And we've only been able to talk about it amongst ourselves and not on the podcast, which has been typical. Yep. But just to give you a brief, what I'll do is just a quick overview of some of the high points. So since it came back, they have reignited all the stuff with the Whisperers. So they basically had this thing where the Whisperers had gone away and there hadn't been any sightings and people were, they were carrying on with the communities and stuff. And then they got wind that they'd returned. It was all a little bit weird because it seemed like it was their misunderstanding of where a walker had been killed and their face had been sliced off. And then a bit later in that same episode, this face washed up. And because the Whisperers wear walkers' skin as masks, they made the connection. They were basically like, oh, this means they're back. They've returned from wherever they've been. So they all went on high alert again. And it then turned out the Whisperers had returned. But I still, we still feel like that situation was them misunderstanding stuff. And it sort of mistakenly got things kicked off again between the two communities. Because there was then a weird thing where a satellite fell from space and caused a forest fire, which meant they had to cross into enemy territory to put out the fire. And Alpha was aware of all of this. And so hostilities kicked off amongst them again. In amongst all of this, there was a weird illness that started ravaging the people in Alexandria, and we were unsure what it was. And along the same time as this, Sadiq had been having these weird PTSD sort of moments where he kept remembering from the previous season when they were captured by the Whisperers and him having to watch people die and stuff. So it was all interlaced with everybody's getting sick. He's the doctor, and there's something not right with him, which led us to speculate that maybe he had been like brainwashed or something, and he was the one that was behind all this, but he didn't realize he was behind all this. And then it turns out that's not what the case was. There was indeed a sleeper agent, but it wasn't Sadiq. There was another character that was also a doctor, and we found out recently that he was actually one of the Whisperers that was there, and he had been there in the barn when all the people got killed, and he was appointed to be the person that would infiltrate their camp and get close to Sadiq. And he was actually the one behind the illness because he had polluted the water supply, which had made people sick. And it was a case of like him getting recon, like intel, and passing it back to the Whisperers, but also trying to sort of take down their community from the inside. So that was one of the main things. Oh yeah, no, and along those lines as well, Sadiq did eventually work out what had happened. And unfortunately for him, that realization came at a very dangerous moment where the guy, this other doctor, Dante, realized that obviously he'd been rumbled and he killed him. So Sadiq is now no longer with us. And that will play into us talking about the next episode. The other important stuff was that they seem to be building towards Michonne's exit because she hasn't been in the series that much. She's been in a few key moments, but she hasn't been as central to the story as a lot of the other characters. But yeah, they seem to be building towards her exit from the show, which is strange the way they're doing it. The other key stuff was Carol came back. Carol's on a mission to take down Alpha, and unfortunately, because of her vengeance, it's then caused them to get into even more conflict with the Whisperers. And you can clearly see that maybe there's going to be a showdown between these two women at some point. It's led her off to making some wild decisions where Daryl has been in tow and has been caught up in all of the goings on, which led to them going off under the guise of one thing, but the reality was it was another thing, which was her trying to infiltrate and get to Alpha, which led to them capturing one of the Whisperers and bringing them back. So there was that. Negan somehow has escaped from Alexandria. We think that it was this crazy character we met in one episode who was one of the people that used to live in the sanctuary. He was a child that grew up there, and he sort of idolized Negan, and he wanted Negan to become Negan again, even though it's been quite a few years since he was the Negan that went around with a baseball bat and everything. But this guy seemed to want him to become that character again. And Negan got free, and Negan clearly had a goal in mind because he's well aware of all this stuff with the Whisperers, but he hasn't really been involved in it. The long and the short of it is he ended up finding his way to their area. They captured him. We had a hilarious episode where Negan was like getting in with the Whisperers and trying to sort of use his usual Negan wisecracks and one-liners to endear himself to people, and also coming into conflict with Beta, who clearly doesn't like him at all, leading to him having a really cool moment where he was effectively left to die in what looked like an unwinnable situation where he was surrounded by loads of walkers. But then later on, he walks into their camp with the usual wisecracks and Neganisms. And he's just kind of like, right, well, that's that done. So I'm here now. And then he got to meet Alpha, and she seemed a little bit like, you're a curious person. Because obviously they have no pre-existing knowledge of who or what he is. So we are under the assumption, aren't we, that he's infiltrating them.
Yeah, definitely. Because they've never met him before, so they don't know anything about him.
Yeah.
Unlike the others who they've been watching, so it's really clever. We think he's gone in there as like undercover.
But he's using the whole, like, they kept me hostage. I was their prisoner, and this, that, and the other.
Well, he's not lying, is he? So
no.
But he's doing it for the good reason, I think, rather than a negative reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's going to be the one that helps take them down from the inside. And then you had the whole thing with Alpha's daughter, who has been there, and she's been subject to sort of bullying and this, that, and the other. And ultimately, she's now left them because Carol wanted to use her as bait because they found out that the Whisperers thought she was dead because Alfred said that she killed Lydia, and so that's kind of galvanized them to follow her and make any sacrifice necessary, because our leader was willing to sacrifice her own daughter. And then Carol basically wanted to show that that was a lie, which really upset Lydia, because she was like, I'm being used again. I thought you people were different, but I'm being used again. So she's gone off on her own. Then you had Gamma. Gamma is the sister of the girl that we saw in the last season, who was made to give up her baby. The sister ultimately ended up dying because Gamma allowed it so, because she so believed in Alpha and stuff. She was like, well, her sister's a liability. The sister tried to attack Alpha, so she was involved in basically her own sister's death because she believed wholeheartedly in Alpha's vision. And
yeah, she sacrificed her own sister, didn't she?
But she was then the one that got to see that Lydia is still alive, which made her realize everything's a lie. Everything that I've been going along with, all the sacrifices I made in her name, were for nothing. And along the side of this, she was sent on a kind of infiltration thing in a way to befriend Aaron and try and find out information. And she sort of got on with him, but kept trying to keep a distance. But that's going to be interesting to see how that friendship develops, especially now with the knowledge that she has, which could again also bring her into play. If she plays it smart, she could also be another person that helps bring down the Whisperers from the inside. Interesting little fact about her as well is that the woman that I didn't even realize, because she looks so different, the actress that plays her is Thora Birch. And Thora Birch was famous for being, do you remember that film Monkey Trouble? Where it was a kid's film, and she was a wisecracking kid, and she had this monkey that was like a thief. It was around the same time as things like Free Willy and all those kind of films came out. There was one with the girl with the parrot called, I think, what was it called, that one? There was a lot of those films where it was like a kid and an animal.
No, I don't remember that one.
It was in the 90s, and she was in this film called Monkey Trouble. She was also in Hocus Pocus, and she's been in a whole bunch of other stuff as well.
Yeah, she looked familiar to me, but not from that monkey film.
Okay.
Probably Hocus Pocus, maybe.
A lot of people might be aware of, there was a cartoon, it was based on a graphic novel years ago, a film called Ghost World. She was in that. She was in American Beauty. She's been in lots and lots of things over the years, but then she took a break from acting for a number of years, and now she's returned. And yeah, she's the one that plays Gamma, and I just was not even aware of that. And I was like, oh my God, I know who she is. She was a child star.
Wow, she still looks quite young now.
So yeah, she's 37.
Wow, should look it.
But yeah, so she's Gamma. So I just thought that was a little interesting fact to throw in there. So I'm trying to think of any other major important things. There was a little thing with Eugene with a CB radio where he made contact with somebody. We don't know who that somebody is, but potentially that's going to be important in the future. So that's probably worth.
Keep it secret.
Yeah, because he got chatting to this woman, and the end point of that conversation was like to basically keep it yourself, for the time being. So it's going to be one of two things. It's either going to be, oh, Eugene, you've got everybody in trouble again because you kept a secret, or it's going to turn out to be something bigger, like she's part of a bigger community or something that will get revealed either at the end of this series or going into the next series. So I think that was worth a mention.
Yeah.
There's been the usual interpersonal things going on with like the king, bless him, is still struggling with his breakup with Carol, and he also seems to have developed cancer, which he's keeping to himself at the moment. And he's going through a lot of kind of existential crises where he almost killed himself a few weeks ago if it hadn't been for Michonne, like talking him out of things. We've had obviously the relationships between the other characters that just, backwards and forwards, little bits and pieces that in context in the episodes, they make sense, but as part of a bigger catch up of everything, I suppose they're not really that important. Can you think of anything?
We got Eugene pushed out of getting involved with the Rosita.
Yes.
He was overbearing about the baby thing, and in the end, so he moved to a different place, didn't he?
Yeah.
Because he felt like he was flogging a dead horse then. So hence why he had the conversation on the walkie. He's like, oh, somebody else is interested in me. So yeah, that's what caught his attention, wasn't it?
The other big thing, I suppose, really, is that we got a little bit of a backstory on Alpha and Beta and how they met.
Oh, yeah.
And it was set sometime shortly after the events that we saw when we originally saw her, when she escaped from that little commune she was in where she killed her husband and things like that. And she was on the run with Lydia, and they ended up in this there was like a school or something, wasn't it? And there was this strange, ginormous man that was like, you can stay here, but you have to stay down there and stay out of this corridor and don't come down this end. And it was all very hostile. And they stayed there for a while, and they were obviously there for quite a bit of time, because as time passed, she got talking to him more and interacting with him more. And there was a moment where they did like a killing spree together, and he realized, you're not like normal people, you're a bit twisted and weird, and he kind of liked that. And she was sort of finding him appealing. Then Lydia, trying to be brave, this is obviously young Lydia as well, covered herself in like guts and stuff and went into an area where there were walkers, which ended up causing a lot of trouble. Alpha went looking for her. He got angry because she was in a place she wasn't supposed to be. She killed a walker, and it turns out that walker, we think, was like his brother or something, don't we? He was his son, yeah, some relation to him that had turned, and he had kept him like locked up because obviously, even though he's not him anymore, it's still that family connection. And she convinced him to leave and said, come with us and stuff, and you don't have to leave him behind. So then I think the basis of Beta's
that's where the skin
mask
thing was born, wasn't it? Because she told him to skin the face off him and wear it.
So the mask he wears is that of this person that was close to him. So that was interesting, getting that little bit of the origin story of their, how they got together and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, because he was in control, but in the end, we think.
Yeah, she's sort of now in control. But then we've seen a few bits of tension with them recently, and even more so now with Negan. There's going to be even more tension. So it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic develops.
Yes.
So I think that's basically it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good roundup.
So that brings us on to this week's episode, which, funnily enough, typically as well, we come back and it's actually the mid-season finale. So we'll be talking about The Walking Dead today, and then we won't be talking about it again until mid-February. This episode was called The World Before. And so this picks up from where we were with the whole stuff that Dante had killed Sadiq, and Rosita went to find Sadiq, didn't she?
Yeah, so she'd gone to find him, hadn't she? And then she realised something wasn't quite right, didn't she? And she had the baby with her and everything.
Yep.
And he was thinking, oh, damn, she's going to find out. So he attacked her, didn't he?
Yeah.
So she put the baby down. There was a fight between her and Dante. But in the meantime, Sadiq had obviously turned, because he was just about to knife him in the head to stop him turning when she turned up.
Yeah.
And then Sadiq then turned into a zombie and started coming towards the child. And bless her, she had to do it, didn't she? She knocked Dante down, and then she had to kill Sadiq herself.
Yeah.
To put him out of his misery, which was so sad.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Like, oh. But then what was interesting is we found a bit of a backstory on Dante, obviously, like you just said, roughly. Alpha sent him in. So how did he get in? Because we were going, who is he anyway? Where did he come from? We were saying about this.
Yeah.
So basically, at some point, they had welcomed new people into the camp. He'd got rescued from some other people that were wandering. They then brought him into the camp, and that's how he got in there, basically.
Yeah, because he was walking with the herd as a whisperer, and then he caught sight of some people, so he took his mask off and was like going, help me! And so these people helped him, and then he was like, thank you so much. The rest of my group were killed and all this lot, and, if it hadn't been for you, I would have been too. And they like basically took him with them, and then they turned up in the community, and because of that, that's how he was able to come inside.
And a few weeks ago, we had an episode where when Lydia was being bullied, and there was this writing on the wall saying silence the whisperers or something.
Yeah.
And we made a comment, because obviously the first one, the one on the door of the house she was living in, we put it down to the bullies. But then we had this comment because they showed, as you went out the gate, it was above the gate as you walked out their gate of their compound.
Along with a few other places.
That's really odd.
Yeah.
And then we found out it's this Dante that had done the graffiti as well. We also found out that when they had the sickness on, there was an old lady that she had died suddenly. Like, I went in to see her and she was dead. We found out he smothered her.
Yeah.
As well. And we also found out the prisoner that they did get from the skin that Carol had caught, he had fed him something poisonous in order for him not to, cause he might have revealed who he was.
Yep.
Anything, he could have said anything. And then he tried to blame the Sadiq doctor because him having his PTSD or whatever it is, that thing with memory thing, saying it was him. I found it in your bag.
Yeah.
Then he started thinking he was going mad anyway. So that was a little bit of background of how he got in to the camp without anyone realizing who he was.
Yeah.
Then we had obviously the girl Gamma had gone back to see Aaron, or the man with the electric arm, is it? Metal arm.
Aaron. Yeah.
Yeah. And then she told him about the baby that they'd found. Apparently it was her nephew.
Yeah, which we knew. Well, we knew this anyway, but obviously they didn't. They didn't know that. Yeah.
And she wanted to trade some information in order to see the baby.
Mm-hmm.
And the information she told him is where the hoard is.
Yeah.
So then we realised that Dante was in prison, so they can interrogate him. Carol obviously wanted to interrogate him.
Yeah.
And then he tells them the plan by Alpha, so they found out why she sent him in. And then they tell Aaron about the plan as well, on top of that.
Yeah.
Daryl and Carol were falling out over Lydia because of she had used her as a pawn in that game, and Daryl was not happy about it.
No.
It's like, why would you do that? And Carol said, well, it's the only way. We need to, this is a way of weakening her gang.
Yeah.
By them thinking, oh, she's lied to them. So they're obviously that believe in her, that anything she says they believe in. If they know she's lying, we might be able to break them down. Basically, that was her thought, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We had Michonne's crew on the way to Oceanside.
Yes.
And they stopped because they saw, I don't know why they stopped originally. They stopped and then they saw some tracks.
Mm-hmm. They were worried that it was the Whisperers, and then they said no, they wouldn't be wandering alone this far out and stuff like that.
Yeah. Little Judith, who's now the star of Walking Dead, has been keeping a diary of everything that goes on. And the English guy, I can't remember his name, the guy with the beard.
Yeah, I've forgotten what he's called now.
He had said about books and reading, and they said, there's a good shop around here. We could go and perhaps get you some new books.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't really want to stop, but she went, okay. So got into some, like it was a library, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So they all wandering around, and the English guy, I don't think he's an English guy, is he? The bearded guy.
Yeah, I know he's not English, but he's quite.
He was looking
for
music, wasn't he? Because he loves music.
Yeah.
So he was looking for books regarding because he plays an instrument. So he thought, I get hold of some of these, and then all of a sudden there was walkers. Coming out of the bookshelves, basically, and some guy disappeared and saved him.
Yes.
But then he disappeared. It's like, oh, who's this guy?
Mm-hmm.
We had Gabriel back at the camp doing the funeral for Sadiq, which was sad.
Yeah.
And then Carolyn King finally spoke.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't tell her, did he?
He looked like he was going to, but then he was like,
how are you then? I'm fine.
Yeah.
Oh, she doesn't know. She knew. But then I suppose he thought, I don't want her to care about me because I'm dying.
Yeah.
There's no glint in her eye, basically. In his eyes, it was like, there's nothing there in her eyes for me anymore. What's the point of just telling her so she'll, it's a saying, isn't it? You don't want to it's like a sympathy vote, basically. He didn't want to do that, so he didn't tell her.
Yeah.
We also had a little bit with Rosita and Eugene.
Yeah, Rosita obviously wanted to take out her upset and her rage, went outside the gates, didn't she? And took on a bunch of walkers on her own, which went a little bit pear-shaped. And luckily, Eugene showed up and saved the day. And he helped her out, and they killed all the walkers, and she was safe. And then that sort of cut then, not long after that, to her at the house and Gabriel coming in. And they had a conversation. They had a bit of an argument about her not feeling safe and him not being able to keep her safe. And obviously he's so frustrated at the moment because he's supposed to be the leader of the community. And he's feeling like all these things are happening. I'm not in control of anything. We had all the stuff with Lydia, Negan's escaped. And yeah.
You've been watching the video of when all the new people come in, the Dante thing. And he's like, why didn't I see this?
Yeah.
Why didn't I suspect anything about him? Because it's so simple what he was saying. We've never known he was a spy, basically, and that was really frustrating him, wasn't it? Because thinking, I'm in charge and I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So anyway, we had Michonne went to Oceanside to warn them about people that they have in their camp. Say, how do you vet them? How can you prove? Basically, because of what had happened at their camp, it's like, how are you vetting the people, the new people?
No, they got to Oceanside, and then she got a call on the radio, and that's when she got told everything that had happened. Sadiq was dead. Dante was behind it. He was working for the Whisperers. That he'd infiltrated. They weren't even aware of it. And then that's when she then said to them all about, new people, and we can't be sure if they can get in so easily. We need to be really careful and stuff. And that all coincided with them talking about somebody that had been spotted around the area. And then there was walkers, and then that man showed up again.
Yeah, the one who saved that guy.
Yeah.
So she was suspicious of him, wasn't she?
Yes.
And then all of a sudden there was walkers everywhere. So they were like, there's a taxi going shouting, where's Judith? Where's Judith? It's like, no, what's happened to Judith?
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
But Judith
meanwhile,
can handle herself just fine.
Yeah, as we find out in a minute. So then back at the other camp, we had Gable having a chat with Dante.
Yes.
And he got so mad, didn't he?
Yep. So mad that he killed him.
Yeah. Really badly as well, didn't he? He really... Slasher killed him, didn't he?
Yeah, and he just kept going.
Never seen him... Because he's never really been aggressive, has he?
No.
With walkers or anything. It's like, he just lost it.
Mm.
He just lost the plot. And then later on, we saw him and Rosita burned him, didn't they?
Well, no, he did that on his own. She saw him, like, leaving and stuff, and she was like, what's going on with him and stuff. And then next thing you saw him, he'd obviously bundled the body up and he burnt it or didn't bury it or anything.
They sort of held hands. That's quite sweet.
Yeah.
Like, oh. It's like,
and then when he went back to the house and they were like together. Yeah.
It's like they had to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when back at Oceanside, when she's looking for Judith, the guy was running and it was Judith that
she cut his leg.
Got a sword out. Yeah, she cut his leg. It's like, good old Judith.
And then she just stood over him with the sword and everything. And then Michonne comes and then he was like saying about, that your daughter? And he's like, she's scary and all, like, you don't need to worry about her. She can handle herself and everything. Yeah. And she's like, I'm really proud of her. I'm really proud of how much of a badass she is.
Yeah. Because later on, when she tied him up, she was sat on the chair watching over him, wasn't she, Judith?
Yeah.
And she was reading one of the books that he had in his bag. And he's like, that's my book. And she's looking at him like, well, my book now.
Yeah.
It's like, he said, yeah, but that's for my daughter. And it's like, whatever. So Michonne sort of said, you go off, I'll keep an eye on him for a bit.
Yeah.
And she had a chat with him, didn't she?
Mm-hmm.
And he said he didn't trust anyone. He was trying to get back to his family. And then he told her about what family was.
Yes, and he said they were on an island.
Bloodworth, I think he said it was.
Something like that, yeah.
And it was a naval base, apparently.
Yes. And so Michonne asked the question about weapons.
Yeah.
She said, do you have weapons there? And it's like thinking, oh, this could be useful in our war against the Whisperers. Yeah. So it's like, well, I'll make you a deal.
I'll take you there. Yeah, I'll take you there. And I'll bring the stuff back on the boat.
And
I thought, oh, and then she said, just me. I'll go and get it.
Yeah.
Now, my idea was like, I know why she's going. But
yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. As I mentioned before, obviously, Michonne is going out of it this season. So to have her not be a big part of a lot of the episodes that have gone before, and then have her in this one, she's now going off on a little side mission all on her own.
Of an adventure on her own. So that's her break from the show, isn't it?
But you wonder, is she going to come back? Is something going to happen to her while she's on this side mission and she'll never make it back to the main team? Will something happen when she's there that means that she does come back to the main team, but then she leaves again? It's like, it's going to be interesting to see how that develops, but it just felt like, oh, this is the beginning of the way of sort of removing her from the show.
That's what I put, because obviously you told me she was leaving. I put, she's off on an adventure or possibly her break from the show. And the guy's called Virgil, isn't he? The guy that she's going with.
Isn't it interesting? We got Virgil and Dante.
Yeah.
Both from, like Virgil wrote like the Inferno, Dante's Inferno was written by Virgil. So it's like, very interesting.
Very odd. So back at the other place, we had Carol, Daryl and the gang are going to where Gamma said the horde was.
Yes.
And we had a nice little bit with Carol and Daryl having a cuddle. Just like, cool. So they followed the route and they got there and there was nothing.
Yeah, there was no sign of the walkers.
Nothing there at all. And
But
it's like, okay.
Because Aaron basically has taken this Gamma, who, well, we now know is called Mary, taken her at her word, and he's like, she, you know, based on what's happened, and she was honest with me, and I don't believe she would have lied. I think the information was correct, but I think they've moved them or something.
They moved them or something, yeah. And then Carol spotted something, didn't she?
It was Alpha.
And it was Alpha. She went heading off after her, didn't she?
And she was clearly baiting them, wasn't she? Because she would stand there and then she'd run and then wait for them to catch up a bit. And then she'd run off again. And it was like,
and then Daryl was fighting off all these walkers and told them, you get off and I'll catch you all up.
And they all ran
after her, didn't they?
And they ended up running into it was like a cave or something, wasn't it?
Well, we don't know. We didn't know at the time, did we? Because they ran off. And then Daryl carried on killing the walkers. And then he goes, right, I'll find them now.
Yeah.
And then he fell into something.
No, it was a cave. So we saw shots of them running, and there was it was like a rock face with a big dark hole in it, and they would go into it and disappear. And it's like, where are they going? What is this? Where are they going? And it was only then with Daryl, then we got to see, because we never got to see any of them going inside it. We just got to see them entering from the outside.
Well, didn't he fall into it?
Daryl ran in after them because it was like, oh, that's where they went. So he ran after them, and as he ran in, because it was pitch black, he stumbled and clearly fell. And when he came to, he noticed that all the rest of them were there as well. So they'd all obviously fallen down this hole that was in this cave.
She obviously lured him into that spot, hadn't she?
And then what happened?
The Horde were there.
And the camera panned out, and they're stood on this little island of this little rock island, surrounded by tons and hundreds of walkers.
So now, you go, so Gamma was helping. She obviously wasn't.
But or was she? Or did Alpha work out about her betrayal?
She told them the information because they'd gone to the original place and they could have just headed back, couldn't they?
Mm.
But she wanted to make sure they didn't because they're thinking, no, I'm going to get them.
Yeah.
She knew Carol would be the one because Carol, didn't they start walking away and just Carol stopped for a minute and looked around?
Yeah.
And then she spotted, and she knows she's got a gun for me. She'll go, they'll follow, get them.
Mm-hmm.
And then it ended. It was like, no, we got to wait.
Yeah, that was the cliffhanger. So it's like, we've got to now wait until February to find out how they get out of this cave.
And how's the others going to find out where they are?
Yeah.
It's like, oh my days. So good. It's like, ah. And I didn't know, and obviously I should have told by the way it ended until you told me it was the last one till next year.
Yeah.
I thought, what a way to end, and then you went, it's the last. I went, oh, it's the worst way to end.
Yep.
Wait so long. It's been absolutely amazing. The whole series from start to finish has been jam-packed.
Mm-hmm.
It's been amazing. Anyone that hasn't seen, watch it up to this point now, and then you'll be raring to go in the new year because it is absolutely awesome.
Absolutely
agree. We only pinpointed stuff, but watching it and all the other little bits that went on, it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, really was great.
They did it proud. Definitely did. Yeah.
So Walking Dead, there we go. So that's it. We won't be talking about it again now until next year.
But we will talk about it every day, every week. Sorry about that, folks.
Moving on then, let's get into the Arrowverse. So we didn't have a Supergirl this week, so we won't have Supergirl to talk about. So what I think we'll do is we'll do a recap on Supergirl next week. So next week we'll do
Before we talk about the episode.
Yeah, so I'll do a recap next week of the goings on in Supergirl. So for the time being, going to focus on just recapping the main points of Flash and Arrow.
Yeah.
So obviously, a lot of this year is building towards the big crossover, which we've got coming up very soon, which I'm glad that we've managed to get back on track so that we can talk about that. So that's good.
Yes.
So we've got, Crisis on Infinite Earths. Now, Arrow has been very heavily set up to be, the final season is all about the build to Crisis. So we'll cover that in a moment. But Flash has had its own separate storyline going on. It's had its, new villain and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's still all connected to Crisis as well. So it's been very well done that they've been able to introduce a new villain. And that new villain is, we mentioned a while back about the guy that was joining the show, which is the actor that played Mohinder in Heroes, has joined the show as this character called Ramsey Rosso. And Ramsey Rosso was a colleague and sort of friend, I suppose, of Caitlyn's, Killer Frost. He was a doctor and things like that. And he's got some kind of like a blood cancer or something like that, like some form of, I suppose, like leukemia or something anyway.
Yes.
Some form of cancer. Through the course of his trying to figure out ways to prevent it and help and things like that, he has become a villain. He has become almost like a vampire called Bloodwork or Bloodworks or something like that. Bloodwork, yeah. So we've had all this little sub story with this guy and this guy's transformation. While he's been trying to cure and find a cure to help people, he's exposed himself and transformed himself and has now become this villain. He wasn't a villain initially. He didn't know what was going on. It was through the course of killing this gangster that then came back to life as a zombie that then it became apparent, wait, this is me. Like, I'm bringing these people back from the dead by infecting them, and then I can control them. So, and then he then heavily leaned into, right, well, the only way to cure it is to do this and make everybody like me and, you know, get this sort of God complex thing, I suppose. So that's been going on, and they've been dealing with that bit by bit, alongside some other little side stories. Like, we had this new character got introduced who could he basically got merged with like a black hole, and he was able to control the black hole. And that was a really cool sequence, where they used Flash, the song Flash Gordon, Queen.
Oh, that was great, yeah.
Where Barry ran into the black hole and was able to isolate this particle they needed to get. And in all the time it was going on, they were, you know, Queen's Flash was playing, which was really awesome. They've also had things like we've had in these shows recently, Muse and some other really cool songs have come up.
It's been amazing, hasn't it?
Yeah, they've had some really good music. So we had that, and then I, you know, was like, well, that was a weird way for it to come back with this weird black hole story that seemed really throwaway. But then the character has shown up again since, and may be involved in something going forward because he's now legally dead. So he's now having to be like a new identity and stuff. And Cecile has been trying to help him come to terms with his new life and, you know, how things are going to be different for him from now on. We also had a bit of sad news, which was that Gypsy, who was the girlfriend of Cisco, was another from another Earth and was a breacher like him, she died. And so her father came looking for help to try and solve the murder. And it seemed as if the murderer was Cisco. But it turned out it wasn't Cisco. It was actually another alternate reality, another Earth version of Cisco, who had perpetrated it and was really clever and made it all set up to make it look like it was our Cisco. But our Cisco was brighter than that and actually managed to get to the bottom of it all and exonerate himself and get this other guy captured. So that was another little side story.
That was a good episode.
Yeah, we've also had side stories to do with the ongoing quest of the elongated man, Ralph, in this weird little case he's got in his detective business of trying to find this lady, Sue Dearborn. And there's been little bits and pieces here and there without any real clear indication of where this storyline's going. But it led to a quite a funny episode the other week where it was like a kind of James Bond parody where him and Barry went off undercover to like a swanky do, which was being run by like a supervillain type guy, like a James Bond type villain who had collected together all these criminals and was auctioning off all of this dodgy stuff. And they had to like infiltrate it. And he was even lifting lines from Bond films, which what was good as well was the show acknowledged it. Like the bit when Ralph and Barry get captured and they're tied to chairs. And this bad guy's like trying to get Ralph to tell him stuff. And he's like, oh, so do you expect me to talk? And he's like, no, I expect you to die. And he's like, oh, you just ripped that off from Goldfinger and all this kind of stuff. So that was like a funny little episode. But what was interesting about it was and this will tie into us talking about this week's in a moment, was Ralph got honoured and he got given his own official badge and he got recognised as another hero for the city because Barry, knowing that his death is seemingly inevitable, that he's going to die during the crisis, he is trying to prepare the team and the city for him no longer being there. So part of that was to recognise the service of the elongated man and to show he's yet another hero, another pillar of justice in this city. So they did this thing where they gave him a badge and it was a press conference and stuff. And he made a comment about how much he loved this city and he would protect it to his dying breath. And at that moment, I went, oh, no. That's the worst thing for someone to say, because normally that means something terrible is going to happen to them. So, yeah, that wasn't great. So there was that. And then, yeah, alongside all of this, we've had the ongoing crisis stuff. So it's been constantly talked about with the group, with Barry trying to get everybody to come to terms with the reality of him not being around and how they're going to deal with it and how he's going to deal with it. And him, you know, sort of leaning into like, this has got to happen. And he did try and see if he could find out what the crisis was and what came after it, which caused him to do a bit of time travel. But that all went a bit wrong. He called on the help of the other Flash to try and help him. And they were able to sort of get him through that sort of timeline thing. But all he saw was just death and destruction and millions and millions and millions of outcomes where everybody just got wiped out of existence. So there's still no clearer as to understanding what exactly this crisis is. But they know that whatever it is, it's awful. And Barry realizing, no matter what I try and do, I can't survive it. If I don't die, everybody else will.
Yeah, basically, he has to sacrifice himself in order for the others to survive it, doesn't he?
Yeah. I think... Oh, and then the only other thing, we got introduced to this season's new version of Harrison Wells.
Yes.
Nash Wells, who is basically Indiana Jones. So he is like an adventurer, explorer type character. He has a tool belt with lots of interesting gadgets on it. And he was on our Earth looking for something, but we didn't know what to begin with. And then it turns out he's looking for something called Eternium, which Cisco's like, that's not a real thing. And he's like, yeah, it is. It's a multiversal element. You just aren't aware of it. And so he's like, oh, okay, I feel a bit stupid now. So they agreed to sort of help him out a little bit and things. But then he's mostly been working separate. It's not like in the past.
He's keeping it close to his chest, isn't he? He's not like getting involved with them. He's trying to do his own thing.
Unlike in previous seasons where we've seen the version of Wells has joined Team Flash, this version of Wells is just kind of doing his own thing.
Apart from the one time he tried to help them because he wanted something out of it with the Ramsey.
Yes. And his belief as well that he knows how to save Barry.
Yeah.
He knows how to save Barry.
Stop Barry dying.
So then...
When he said Barry Allen, so then we started going, ooh.
Yeah, because we've had a theory that we've chatted about and developed over the weeks, which is how they keep saying, the Monitor said that in the crisis, the Flash must die. And he never once has said Barry Allen, the Flash, or just Barry Allen. He's always just said the Flash. And as we know, it's a multiverse.
There's lots of versions.
There are lots of versions, exactly. So what we're being set up to think might not be the case. It may not be this Flash that dies. A Flash, a version of the Flash may end up dying, but not necessarily our Flash, not necessarily our Barry Allen. But they're still working under the assumption that it's Barry that's going to die. So we will see how that all pans out. But Nash has been looking for something, and it turns out that Nash is actually on the trail of the Monitor.
Yes.
And he's been tracking him with all of his gadgets and things. And he finds in a sewer system a strange like frequency, which is something to do with this Eternium. And it's like, that's where you've been hiding. We also got introduced to this character called Allegra, who's got like a hypersonic sort of powers. And she got basically pulled into this because of her abilities. He took her because she's ended up working with Iris at the paper.
Yeah, they saved her from something a few weeks ago, didn't they?
Yeah.
And now she works with them on the paper.
Because she also wanted to be a journalist before she got exposed to this and turned into a metahuman. He teamed up with her and took her with him, and because obviously she was able to be helpful using her powers. She was able to help him to get through this barrier that was in front of whatever he's trying to get to. And while they were spending time together, he seemed like there was a sense of familiarity, like there was some pre-existing relationship there. Clearly, she doesn't have a relationship with him, but we're now wondering whether maybe she's connected, like another version of her from whichever Earth he comes from, she's connected to him in some way. And that's the reason specifically he picked her and he wanted to work with her. The other theory doing the rounds is that he may actually be Earth 2 Harrison Wells, pretending to be a different version, and that she reminds him of his daughter, Jessie, who we know is dead because, well, we'll talk about Earth 2 when we talk about Arrow. But, yeah, so it's possible that he's a man on a revenge mission pretending to be a different character in order to keep himself distant from Team Flash. So there could be that connection. That's why he's got this connection with her, not because he's got a pre-existing relationship with her on another Earth, but because of she reminds him of his daughter. Yeah. So it's all a bit difficult to tell. A lot of this is theorizing and speculation, but we will talk a little bit more about what Nash is up to in this next episode review as well, because there was another thing that came up in that episode. But yeah, so he's on the trail of the Monitor for some reason. And they're all gradually coming to this conclusion that maybe the Monitor isn't good.
No.
That maybe the Monitor is actually the thing that they should be trying to stop rather than help.
And our personal thoughts are he's actually the cause of it.
So it's all...
Is he actually the cause of the crisis? And not the actual remedy of the crisis.
Well, that again could be turned on its head again based on this week's Arrow. But we'll talk about that when we get to that. Yeah. So I think that's all of the main things.
Yeah, that updated us on what happened on there.
Yeah. So
obviously we began this episode with the end, like the beginning of the end, with Dibney and Ramsey fighting. There was an awesome bit of fighting where they went out and they were actually floating.
Yes.
Because of Dibney being so rubbery.
Because this episode, the important thing as well, because I want to make a comment about this later on, but this episode was part 1, The Last Temptation of Barry Allen is what this episode was called. And yeah, as you say, it started how it ended, which was Ralph on the roof after receiving his badge. Ramsey shows up and then it picks up from there and they end up having a fight, which they was really cool. Like they were floating in the air and all of this stuff and lots of Ralph stretching and him using his blood and things like that. And that went on for a good sort of 10 minutes.
Yeah. And at one point it looked like Dibney had won the fight.
Yeah.
But he had jabbed him with something. And well, obviously, because that was the bit where he put his arm down the sewer, wasn't it? And then pulled his arm back around and bashed him. Mm-hmm. But he'd already attacked him with something. And then Ramsey disappeared like Rubber Man, like elongated.
Yeah, because he drained some of Ralph's blood, and then was able to somehow like assimilate Ralph's powers. And then when he left Ralph there lying there, like you said, he sort of stretched and boinged and went off into the distance
boing.
In the same way that Ralph would do because he's all rubbery.
Yeah. So I was thinking, oh no, he's took his powers. So they found him, didn't they? And they got
Frost
him back
found
to the
him,
lab.
yeah.
Yeah, they got him back to the lab, and then they realised. Did they decide he needed a transfusion? But the only one they could get to give it was Flash.
Yeah, because they were on about Flash's fast healing properties, that the only way to negate how quickly he was deteriorating was to take some of Flash's blood, because his speed healing in his blood would be able to help Ralph heal faster. So
obviously they did that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Argus had took Dibney to recover somewhere.
Yeah.
And then Barry was pondering about the crisis. And then Ramsey was there.
Yeah, because Barry, that's right. Because Barry had his transfusion and stuff. And then Barry went home. And then Barry got home, and all things were a little bit weird. And then he was stood looking around his flat or something, wasn't he? And then the next thing, Ramsay was stood behind him.
Yeah, and he knew he was Barry. Barry was the Flash.
Yeah.
But it turned out it was like some sort of hologram that wasn't actually there. Well, it appeared that way.
Yeah, because Barry went for him and his hand went straight through him, didn't it?
And then he told him he knew about the crisis.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my days. And then it wasn't real, was it? He woke up, it's like, well, that didn't really happen.
Yeah, because they had the fight scene, and then obviously he couldn't fight him, and a vase got broken and all this stuff. And then Barry passed out on the floor, and then he woke up, and they went to Star Labs, and they ran some tests, and said that he should be all right now. And he said he didn't understand all this. And best thing to do, go home and try and rest up again. So he went home and tried to rest up, and then his mum appeared to him.
Yes.
But it wasn't his mum, it was the Speed Force.
The Speed Force, yeah.
And then she revealed to him that everything that he'd been doing, so all the stuff we saw with him and Ramsay, and then him going back to Star Labs and him coming home again and stuff, none of that had happened.
No.
That was all in his mind.
It's because when he'd done the transfusion, somehow he'd got some of that blood in him.
Yes.
It then made him now hallucinate, and he was controlling him.
It was infecting him, yeah. And she said, and the Speed Force version of his mum basically said, because some of his blood got into your system, and because he can control, like the way his powers work now is that the blood is controllable, which is how he's able to control other people when he infects them. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to slowly take over and take control of your body. Yeah. Now, your speed healing is trying to fight it, but unfortunately, it's not enough. You yourself have to fight it. You have to will yourself to beat this thing. I can only help you so much, and you need to, you realize that none of this is real. You are laid on the floor in your flat. Since you came home from the blood transfusion, you collapsed, and that's where you've been ever since. So you need to sort of wake up. You need to come to.
But then he had this weird dream, and he was at a weird dinner with them all, and they were eating stuff. Oh, that's horrible.
Yes, because they're all eating food, and he's like, this is all really weird and stuff. And then he sits down, and it's like, oh, I made you a plate, and he's getting ready to eat. And then Ramsay walks in the room with a lasagna. And he's like, what? And he's like, hey, everybody, look what I've made. And they're all like, oh, this is amazing. And as he cuts through it, blood starts coming out of it. And then they're all eating it. And they've all got,
coming out of their mouth,
it's disgusting. It was like something out of a horror movie.
Yeah.
And he's getting really freaked out.
The next day, he was in the secret room where he sees Gideon.
Yeah.
He was in there. Like, what? Where am I?
And he was looking at the paper. The Flash disappears in crisis.
The Flash headline.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was at the gravestones.
Yeah, he was in it. Well, that was weird because he collapsed on the floor and Ramsay was behind him. And then he's like going, stop fighting me, Barry. I'm trying to help you. And he's like, with my help, you could survive this. You could get through. You don't have to die in this crisis. You could become more powerful than you would ever imagine. And Barry's still trying to fight. And he's like, let me show you more. And then it's like this weird, it was almost like a weird, like Christmas Carol or whatever. He's taking him to all these different places. And they were in Star Labs, but in this room, it was full of headstones. And there was one for Nora. There was one for, what's his name? The one that was the original part of, Ronnie, that was part of Firestorm.
Yeah, Ronnie, yeah.
There was one for Leonard Snart, Captain Cold.
Yeah.
There was a few others I spotted, and there was one for Nora. And then at the very back of the room, there was one for his mum and dad.
Mm.
And then there was one for him.
Mm.
And he was like going, it doesn't have to be this way, Barry. All you have to do is join with me, allow me to take control of you, and then you'll be able to be eternal. You'll be able to beat whatever's coming. You'll be able to survive this crisis. You'll be able to save everybody, be the hero you were meant to be. And then he showed him another vision, which was like
lead into a nursery.
Oh, yes. Yeah, there was that bit. That's right. And he was trying to hold the baby.
But no, I know it's not real, but let me hold her. And he wouldn't let her hold her.
Mm-hmm.
There was Ibney, then there was Iris, then there was Joe, then there was Wellesley.
And then there was a woman on the street, and she was like dying or something. And he was like, look at the power you would have. And then he saw himself show up as the Flash.
Yeah.
He then bent down to help this woman, and
his blood stuff.
Yeah, the blood came out of his hand and into her and like brought her back to life.
Yeah.
And he's like, you have the power to give, like, you could save everybody, you could heal everybody. All you have to do is just let me in, let me take control.
He showed in the new headline as well, was Flash lives.
Yeah.
He said, so does everyone. If you have my powers within you, you can save everybody.
And then the Speed Force is like trying to get through to him again and say, he's lying, he's trying to manipulate you. And what was interesting here, now, the reason I wanted to point out what the name of the episode was, not only because we always do, but because it was like, Barry is Jesus. Like, so Barry doesn't want this. Barry doesn't want to die. But the Speed Force was basically saying, like, this is how it has to be. You know, you have to die to save the world. You know, you are the savior. You are the one. Your sacrifice is what will allow everybody to survive. And this is what you have to do. And then you've got Ramsey trying to tempt him and say, but it doesn't have to be that way. We can do things a different way. Join forces with me. And Barry getting upset and going, why have you given me this decision? I didn't want this decision. And it's so parallels with the story of, like, you know, when Jesus is going to be crucified and stuff, of him asking God, take this away from me. And then when he goes out into the desert and the devil shows him the world and shows him all the cities of man and all of this kind of stuff. It was all very much.
He has to do it because Ramsey was showing him all the good sides of it, and you could have your daughter, you could have your life. So then he turned on the Speed Force, didn't he?
Because he said, you can't feel. You don't have feelings. You don't know loss. You're not even a human. You're a thing. You're a entity. You know, you're an energy source. And you've just used me and manipulated me. You don't care about me. And so he lashed out at the Speed Force, which was much to Ramsey's happiness, of like, yes, that's right. You know, it was very Star Wars of like, yes, embrace your hatred. It's like, good, give in to the dark side. And then there was a whole moment where, like, on the outside, they were showing then obviously real time, and they're monitoring him, and they're going, oh, his readings are off the charts, and we don't know what's going on, and we can't get through to him, and we've got to try and find a way to get through to him.
Frost was not knowing what to do because she doesn't really know how to deal with stuff like that.
And she was really freaking out, wasn't she?
Yeah.
So
and luckily, Cisco had an idea, and then they appeared, didn't they?
Yes, because he ran and got adrenaline, didn't he? No, it was that the Speed Force drug.
Yeah.
That we saw a couple of seasons back. I can't remember what it's called now. Something X.
I looked at it and I was going to write it down.
But it's a drug that basically creates artificial Speed Force powers. So he was like, if I inject him with this, it will like supercharge him to allow him to fight this.
Yeah.
And they were trying, and while they were trying to do this, he was then battling with Ramsey and with the Speed Force, and they were pulling him one way or the other, and he was like caught in the middle, and like half of him was becoming like blood, and the other half was all like electricity and the lightning power, and he was like in the middle, like sort of thing. And then because they injected him with this stuff, obviously it had the effect, and he woke up.
I was like, yeah, that did that. I went, did they save him? Like,
yeah.
I went, phew, that was close.
And then it's like, oh, he's all right. You know, they brought him back. He's going to have to recover. But he's like, no, there's no time for that. The crisis is coming. We need to get on with stuff. Now, before we move on a bit further, there was a little side story, which was Iris
and the story
and
with the little girl.
Camilla, the girlfriend of Cisco, and Allegra.
Yes.
Going to do this investigation into this.
Maestron Couriers.
Yeah, and it was to do with the cousin, Allegra's cousin, Esperanza.
Yeah. He was there at the time, apparently, when it all kicked off.
And what had happened to her, and how had she become like a killer and a bad guy? And it was like somebody had made this happen. And so they were on the case of all these things, of all these murders, and it was all leading to this company, which then when they did this, they had this confrontation with this guy on a rooftop. In a parking lot. And it was like, we know who you are. You work for this company. And he basically revealed, like they said, that you're like an Uber driver for wealthy individuals that just, you know, you just courier stuff to the people that don't want to know. And he's like, the girl, you know, it was to do with a diplomatic thing. And so it had to be kept hush hush and things like that. And he's like, you know, we work for wealthy clients, ferrying stuff around that they don't want to be on the radar. So we're not assassins or anything like this. And he was like, I'd be happy to meet with you and give you an interview. Here's my card. And it was for a company called Maelstrom or something like this.
Maelstrom Couriers or something.
Yeah. So they're like, oh, okay.
I guess
Well,
I don't believe him.
but they were like, oh, sorry about that then. Okay, well, we were clearly on the wrong track here and stuff like that. So then they left, and the guy was like, can I get on with my job now, sort of thing?
Yeah, and what's her name? Allegra.
Yeah.
She kept saying to Iris about the story. She said, oh, don't you think this other thing that's more... No, we got to move on.
And that's connected. Yeah, that's connected to last week when Nash basically told her who the Flash was.
Yeah.
And she's like, wait, my boss's husband is the Flash? And it's like finding out all these people know, except she didn't know. And then she found the headline on Iris's computer of the article that she will write about the Flash disappearing in the Crisis. Yeah. So she's basically trying to get the truth out of her by giving her little hints and nudges.
Yeah.
Which she's like going, oh, no, we need to do it. And eventually she confronted her with it, didn't she?
Mm.
And she's like, I know your husband is the Flash and all of this stuff.
You need to write this out. Not time. No, not yet. And all this. But the guy that they went to see, they found him. They went and interviewed him. They found him dead, didn't they?
Well, yes, because in between that, because that's right. They met him. They left there. They had the conversation about Barry being the Flash and how she hadn't told her and who else knows. And basically everybody knows. Camilla was like, oh, yeah, I've known for about 6 months and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, my boyfriend used to be the Vibe.
Yeah. And then she explained to her about the story and about it's not time to write it yet and all this kind of stuff. And then she got the call about Barry. And so she went off and went back to Star Labs where she met up with Barry. And she was like, there's something not quite right about him. Because she's like, do you not think you should rest, babe? And he's like, no, I can't rest. I've got to. And he was running all these simulations and going onto the computers and things like that. And for some reason, Frost and Cisco hadn't really picked up on anything wrong, but she did. She was like, there's something not right here. So then she said, okay, babe, I'll leave you to it. And as she left, she said to them both, that's not Barry.
Yeah, I didn't think Barry isn't Barry, methinks. I thought that as well.
And then he was then stood at their whiteboard thing they have where they write down all their theories and things about various things. And they're all like kind of going, are you okay, Barry? Are you all right? Sort of thing.
And she put her hand on his shoulder and he turned around.
And he was all like, he looked like a goblin. He had like, his eyes were all bloody and he had blood around his lips and all this stuff. And then you go, oh, shoot. The decision that he made in his mind, he clearly chose Bloodworks.
It didn't save him in time.
Yeah, he obviously didn't. He didn't reject it. He allowed Ramsey to take over him.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh no, that's not good. So he knocked everybody flying and then he zoomed out of there and then he showed up somewhere and then you see this huge creature, the shadow of something. And then you hear all this like crunching noises and all this like, and then when the camera swivels around, it's Ramsey. So he can obviously turn into something else now. And Barry like kneels down in front of him and he's like, oh, I'm so glad you chose to join us. And he's like, together we will be able to change everything.
And Barry's awful, like grinning and all this blood on his teeth.
And like I said, he looked like a goblin because all of the flash things that are on the sides, like the ear things that are on the sides of his outfit were all like weird and pointed. And he had blood around his mouth and his eyes. He looked really scary looking.
He did. He looked awful, didn't he? He's like, ah.
And then we had the bit as well, obviously, where they'd found out the guy they'd met with had died and that it was like mysterious circumstances. So it's like, who killed him?
And the girl found something, didn't she?
Yes, she found a token.
Yeah.
With the symbol on it or something. And they're like, we need to investigate this now. So it's like, okay, this is the beginnings of a bigger conspiracy, a bigger thing going on here.
Yeah. And obviously Wellesley.
And then we had the Flash logo, didn't we? And the Flash logo, then all blood started running down it and covering it up.
Oh, that was cool, wasn't it?
And then it went to the before the end credit scene, which was Nash Wells busy down in the tunnels working on this wall, and he managed to break through it. And then he uncovered it, and there was all these symbols. And he's looking at all the symbols. And I was like trying to work out, I was like, these symbols, for a start, to begin with, I thought they were the symbols of the hero. I was like, that looks a bit like arrow, that looks a little bit like that. I was like, are they supposed to be symbols for? And then I was like, no, it's not. It's alien writing. And then he like scanned it or something, didn't he? And then he was like, so Ma Navu, which is like the monitor's real name. He's like, I found you at last. And then he's like, so you ran and ran from all these other places. You ran away and you kept running away. And this is where you've hidden. But now I found you. And then it was like, that was it. And that was the end.
Like, oh, so good. And you say it's a 2-parter?
Yeah.
Well, it has to be, obviously, the way it ended. So good, though, wasn't it?
It was really good. So exciting. So, yeah, so that was Flash. So Flash has been very good. And like I said, it's been telling its own story.
The crisis, isn't it?
Right. Okay. So let's move on to the final one then. So Arrow. Yeah. So Arrow has all basically been about crisis. So what we've seen this season so far is Oliver going from place to place with a shopping list of things that the Monitor wants. So the Monitor has been sending him here, there, and everywhere to other Earths and to other times and to other parts of the world in on the main Earth to try and collect various things. We saw him go to Earth 2 in the first episode, which was really cool and also confusing because it was like, wait, this is before everything. This is like after he came back from the island and like his mum's there and Tommy's alive and Malcolm Merlin was his stepfather and all this lot. And then you realize, wait, he's on Earth 2 and he met up with Laurel on Earth 2, who knew who he was because obviously she had come back from the main Earth and gone back there. So she's like, why are you on my Earth? What are you doing here? And they worked together to try and solve a little mini mystery that was going on in this. In all the meantime, he was trying to get his hands on a dwarf star alloy that was there. And the long and the short of that was that towards the end, when they resolved everything, they solved the mystery, they got the bad guys, they got the alloy, and then this, whatever it is, hit Earth 2. And everything started being... Yeah, Diggle came looking for him. And so then Diggle teamed up and he was like, yeah, I was supposed to do this on my own. And he's like, you're not doing it on your own, Oliver. We've been through this together from the beginning. So he was like, okay, so he's got Diggle with him. And then there was this weird wave of something started disintegrating everything. Laurel was with them. They convinced Laurel to come with them. And then Earth 2 was wiped out.
Yeah, and they had to go through a portal or something, didn't they?
Yeah, they had to. Well, because Cisco had given them these breach portal things to allow them to travel to other worlds. So they were able to escape back to the main Earth before they got wiped out as well. But then that was the whole thing I was saying about our theory about Nash Wells. Is that if he is Harrison Wells from Earth 2, obviously Earth 2 has been wiped out. So he's going to have a reason to want to pursue and try and get vengeance on the Monitor because his whole world was destroyed and his daughter's dead and everything. So that ties into that bit that we mentioned about the Flash. So you had that, and then you had Oliver going on other missions. He got sent to Hong Kong, where he met up with, what's her name? With the mask and the sword.
Can't remember her name.
Oh God, it's gone out of my head now. Those of you that know the DC stuff, she was in Suicide Squad, and she wears a mask. She's Japanese. She wears a mask. She's got a big sword. No, but that's her real name. Her real name's Tatsu or something like that. But I can't remember what her character name is. Her, anyway. So they met up with her because we've seen her previously. There was also that woman. Is it China White? The criminal woman. Yeah. She was in it. And it was all about them trying to get this. There was a scientist that they were trying to get.
That's right. They were trying to get the scientist. He needed him.
They didn't get the scientist, but Layla got the scientist. And then we found out that Layla, John Diggle's wife, the leader, the head of Argus, is working with the Monitor. Or for the Monitor. So that was an interesting little reveal. And comic book thing, for those of you that are aware of all this, in the comics, her character is also a character called Harbinger, who does indeed work for the Monitor during the crisis. And for a long time, people have been wondering this. They've been going, oh, you know, is she going to be that character, or are they going to have a different character or whatever? And then no, they've kept to the comic books in that this person is indeed Harbinger. We've still got some gaps in our knowledge there, but we're getting there bit by bit.
Yeah.
we had also been having the future things, which all seemed quite pointless at the time because it was all like, oh, here's the future. And they're dealing now with they are the Team Arrow in that timeline. And they've got to deal with the threats. And the biggest threat was the Deathstroke gang and trying to take them down. And they just kept going to that. And we were like, oh, yeah, it's just all sort of
this again.
Not really any point to this, but, you know. So we had all that going on. Then we had the return of Speedy because Oliver had to go off in search of some stuff to do with the League of Assassins. And he met up with his sister along the way. So that allowed her to come back for an episode. And it also allowed the League to come back for an episode. And they went looking because Oliver was starting to doubt the Monitor and started thinking, maybe he's not on our side. Yeah. Maybe there's more going on here than meets the eye. I think it was Diggle that made him start thinking that because he was going, how do we know what his intentions are? You know, this is a godlike being. Why would he wipe out another universe and all this kind of stuff? So they started doubting the Monitor's intentions.
What does he need with all the stuff? That's what I was thinking as well.
Yeah.
Why does he need all this stuff? Maybe he's the cause of it.
Yeah. So he went off to try and see if the League, because the League have been around for thousands of years, maybe they had an encounter with him. Long and the short of that is that, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom style thing, they had to negotiate like a hidden tomb and go on a quest and find a map and get through trials and deal with the splinter organization of the League that are trying to take control and all this kind of stuff. Until eventually they found this tomb which had all this information, and then there was a scroll, and the scroll indeed detailed a meeting between the founder of the League and this being, and the being talking about other realities and about, you know, this big plan, which even seemed to incriminate him even more. It made him seem even more like he's just using us as pawns, and
he's got a revenge agenda, and he's going to use everybody to help him.
Yeah. Then we got the relevancy of all the future stuff because a weird thing happened where Oliver got transported back to the Arrow Cave, and so did his kids. And they were all there from the future. And you're like, what the hell's going on? And then it turned out that the Deathstroke gang was at it in Star City again. So they had to all join forces. They all thought it was to do with Diggle's son, but it turned out it wasn't Diggle's son. But as a result of all that, they had to spill the beans on this is who we are and this is what happened in the future. And oh yeah, your daughter's dead and your son's a criminal and this, that, and the other, which was all quite hard to comprehend for our normal timeline heroes. But they eventually made peace with it all. And they said, well, if we can stop this thing, then we might be able to change the future. So they did indeed stop everything. And Oliver managed to curb his daughter's murderistic tendencies and get the guy that was Deathstroke to be arrested rather than her kill him. And they were then hoping that they could resolve the future a bit. And they talked about this whole thing in the future about the Canary Network, which led to Dinah and Laurel saying, well, why wait until the future? Like, why wait until then to form this Canary Network? Why don't we make a start on it now?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, that's really interesting. Then another interesting thing is Oliver training the daughter even more in the art of fighting and everything that he knows, and showing her all the different arrows and showing her how to use everything. Yeah. And then it turns out the relevancy now, what it seems to be, the reason for the time travel, the reason for the whole Canaries thing, the reason for the daughter being like him and following in his footsteps is because I mentioned a little while back, they've announced there's going to be another Arrow show that's coming in the future. That Arrow show has now got a new name and a new poster and everything. And it's basically called Green Arrow and the Canaries. And the Green Arrow in this is actually the daughter.
Yes.
So that explains why Oliver, the whole thing with him training her and showing her everything is because she's going to take up the mantle.
When she goes back to the future, that he wants her to be equipped.
Yeah. So she'll be able to be the Arrow and she will work with the Canaries and they will be like a new team. So this series is setting up the next, like the spin-off, the continuation of Arrow, but like in a new series form.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, that all makes sense now. All of this stuff now means something. So then it was another trip down memory lane, which saw them have to go to Russia because they needed to get hold of something, because Curtis came back and said, the only way that we can construct
or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, the only way we can construct something in order to stop this monitor guy, we need plutonium. And the only place we can get it is Russia. Okay, let's go to Russia. Anatoly! So we get to see Anatoly again. But then we also get all the Bratva stuff, which leads to Oliver eventually having to tell his kids, yeah, I was actually the leader of the Russian mafia at one point, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. There was a lot of tension, but also a lot of bonding, led them to a fight club.
Layla had infiltrated Laurel.
Yes, Layla trying to get Laurel to basically betray. She's like, we can give you your Earth back. In order to do that, you have to betray Oliver Queen. So she's like, oh, quandary, what do I do? Because I've tried to turn over a new leaf. So they go to Russia on this mission. She's having this crisis of conscience because she
all the
keeps
way
getting...
through, you're going, is she going to screw him over or not, as well, throughout the whole thing.
But on top of that, as well as thinking that, it's also her being told by everyone left, right, and center, oh, you're a hero. You're so inspiring. You're a hero. You become a hero. And so then she's like, I can't do this.
No.
You know, I'm not the same Black Siren. You know, I am now like the canary. I have embraced being like the Laurel from this Earth. I've turned over a new leaf. I'm not a criminal. I'm not a bad guy anymore. I am a hero. So it ultimately led to her rejecting the offer that she was given and saying, I'm not going to do that. So yeah, they had all this time in Russia, led to some undercover espionage stuff where the son pretends to be a wealthy American with his 2 cage fighters to get them in the fight so that they can distract the Bratva, which will allow Laurel and Anatoly to get into the secret room where they need to get their hands on the plutonium and all this stuff. And it was a fun little adventure. They got what they needed.
Roy came back into that one, didn't he?
Yes, using the knowledge of the future meant that Diggle was able to go and track down Roy, who was living under a secret identity. It's like, how did you find me? Oh, Oliver's son from the future told us where to find you. It's like, what? He recruited Roy. I need your help on a mission. Turns out he didn't really need Roy's help, but it was like, no, we need you back as part of the team. This crisis is coming. We need all hands on deck.
Yeah.
So Roy agreed, okay, I'm annoyed with you because you tricked me, got me back involved under false pretenses, but you need me. I'm going to stick around. Yeah. So that's like, okay, so that brought Roy back into it. So it's been a lot of a greatest hits package so far. There've been this ongoing story of the stuff with the Monitor, but it's also been the greatest hits of Arrow, bringing back all these old characters, bringing back some of these old plot points. Oh, remember this thing? Or do you remember this thing from this season? But it's been done in a really good way. It's been very, very enjoyable.
It's been the best episode of Arrow for a long time, which is annoying.
Yeah, definitely. Because you're like, oh, it's finishing.
The last 2 seasons, we were both sort of going, as you lot all know, because you've listened to us talking about it on the podcast. Dom's like going, Arrow. But this season, the last one ever, it's been awesome.
Yep.
Like, why?
So then we have the moment that leads into this week's episode. So at the end of the episode, they're back from Russia and Laurel goes to meet Lila. Lila's like, did you bring what I asked? No, I didn't. I'm not going to do it. I'm not that person anymore. I can't turn on them. And she's like, that's a shame. And she's like, it's an even bigger shame you're keeping secrets. Maybe you should come forward and tell the truth. I can't do that. It's too complicated. Oh, well, it's a shame I took that decision out of your hands. Out comes Oliver and Diggle. Lila, what the hell's going on? Oh, no, you shouldn't have come here. This wasn't supposed to happen. Chum, chum, chum. They all get shot in the neck by tranquilizer darts. Down they go. Yeah. End of the episode. Then we go into this week's. This week's episode was called Reset. And it was very interesting. So we start with Oliver waking up on a sofa in a suit.
In his house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and wakes up. The kids are all there coming in, and he's saying, "Are you okay?" and everything. So yeah, all it's a misunderstanding. They don't need the plans now. And he goes, "Aren't you late for this? What was it? A fundraiser or something?" So what fundraiser? Yeah. The council meeting, and there was like an invitation on the table.
Yep.
So he goes, yeah, of course. Like thinking, why are they acting like this? So off he goes to the fundraiser, and at the fundraiser is Diggle.
Yeah.
And he's going, mate, we got tranked 2 days ago. Don't worry, Layla apologised. It's like,
She explained everything, and Oliver's like, no, what? This didn't happen. It wasn't 2 days ago. It was just a few minutes ago.
And he also made the comment about Palmertech, didn't he? He goes, when was Palmertech rebuilt?
Yeah.
That's another little throwaway of another thing that was from old school.
Mm.
And then Renee said, oh, the mayor wants to see you. You've got
He's
to come
like,
see the mayor. And he went, okay, all right. And he said some name of somebody. He said, no, it's not him anymore. He goes, and then he looked at it was Quentin, yeah.
And then you're like, what the hell's going on? Quentin's dead.
Yeah.
How is he here and as the mayor? And Oliver was really taken aback by all of this.
Dead for this episode.
Yeah. So it was really cool to see him because I like the actor and the character as well. Him. And then he basically is like, yeah, that all the stuff that you remember happened. You did go to prison. I did get shot by Diaz, but I was saved.
I was lucky and they saved me, yeah.
And he's like, that's not what happened. Like, what? Sort of, he's really like confused. And he's like, I'm not, this isn't either not real or I'm on another Earth again because things are different and things aren't the way they should be. And then while they were having this conversation, he's saying what he wants to run through something in his speech. What's his name? Renee comes running in and he's like, Mr. Mayor, we've got a situation. And it turns out that at the police depot, there's a hostage crisis and that they're only wanting to speak to the mayor. So Oliver goes with him and they get there and Dinah is obviously she's in charge of the police like she is in the main timeline. Yeah. And she explains the situation. They agree, basically, he's going to go in with a vest and try and talk to them. And it looks like it's all under control. And he's going to talk to this guy and that's all fine. But then the guy, Oliver takes out all the others. The guy basically is like, no, sorry, pulls out a detonator device, blows up the building, everybody dies. And then Oliver wakes up on the sofa and it's the same time and he's sat in a suit and the kids come in the door. And then you go, it's Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
And they even said that in the episode.
I know they did, yeah.
They talked about so basically what you're saying is, because it was when he told Quentin, wasn't it? And Quentin was like, you're telling me that we're stuck in the plot of a Bill Murray movie where we're reliving the same day over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, there was another reference later on by, who was it made the reference? Some other character. Was it Laurel or someone else said the Tom Cruise Edge of Tomorrow?
Yeah.
About that. And he was like, he was more familiar with the Bill Murray Groundhog. And I was like, yeah, I prefer the Groundhog Day reference as well, not the Tom Cruise one.
Personally, yeah. But that's what you just think it is, don't you? Groundhog Day.
Yeah. So that set up the premise for the episode. So we don't need to go into every last thing. But basically it was try and redo the thing again, try and change the outcome. Still didn't change.
And
okay,
they kept thinking the thing they
stuck
had to
in this loop.
See, what they thought they had to do is save Quentin.
Well, what he thought he had to do to begin with.
That's what he thought he had to do, yeah. Basically, that's what it was.
It became they on, I think, the third go-round where he went... No, it wasn't. It was the second go, wasn't it? Where this time he went downstairs to get the bomb and Laura was there and she's like, oh, it doesn't matter. I can tell you all this because you won't remember anyway. And she starts telling about the time. And then he goes, wait, you're in the time loop as well? And then she's like, hey, so you're okay. And they both realize they're both in the time loop. And they both remember only a few minutes ago being on the rooftop and being tranquilized. So the only one that doesn't seem to remember this properly is Diggle. So out of the three that were there that got tranquilized, there's only two of them that seem to be aware of what's going on. So
I
he's
like the bit where she said, your mouth is talking, but it's Felicity's words.
Yeah, that's right.
Even she got mentioned in that episode.
Yeah. But they agreed. They're like, look, we're not going to be able to stop it this time. So next time we're going to meet at this place and this is what we're going to do and blah, blah, blah. And so they kept trying to manipulate the situation. Let's try and resolve this. Find out some more information. Move a bit further forward. Find out who's behind this gang. Find out who's trying to do this. Why are they trying to do this? You know, and all of this kind of stuff. And it kept playing out and it kept going and they kept doing different things each time and it wasn't working. And then what was interesting then was it became, as much as she was pretending to be, well, it clearly became she was pretending, but Lila, when they kept speaking to her, it became more and more evident that she also sort of somehow existed outside of this time loop.
Yeah.
Because she started saying stuff to them about what they were doing or what they should be doing or what they're not focusing on the right things, or giving them little hints as to you're not approaching this the right way and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, okay. So Lila is not in this scenario. She's not
That's
part
like, what's
of it.
he not seeing about this scenario that he has to do? One thing I thought was interesting, global solutions, wasn't that something to do with the future?
Yeah.
When they mentioned we have to go there, and some guy called White.
Yes, that was something to do with in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously that was the point where Quentin got shot again and Laurel couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, and she said, I can't take this. I can't keep going through this. And so she had her
moment
the
heart, yeah, with him.
that she never got to have with him. Yeah, where she was like, thank you for changing me and making me feel like your daughter, and, you know, having an impact on my life, making me want to turn my life around and be more like your Laurel and all this art. And he was like, you are my Laurel. And, you know, they had this really heartfelt send off, and then it didn't reset.
No.
It was still there. And Oliver's like, I don't understand what's like. And she's like, you know, I think I've accepted what I had to, like, it was. And then it's like, this is a test. You have to, something has to, it's a puzzle that has to be solved. And hers was, she had to let go of the past. She had to have the resolution. And then she was able to make peace with things and move forward.
Yeah.
So she was gone. So then that was it. So then Oliver's on his own, and Oliver's trying to figure out, well, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Like, how am I supposed to get? So he kept trying, and you got the impression he tried hundreds and hundreds of times.
Yeah.
Different ways. And then to the point where, because Quentin believed him every time, because Quentin's like, well,
I've never not believed in you.
Yeah, he's like, all the things I've seen, you know, like with the Flash and with like my daughter coming from another universe and my other daughter coming back from the dead and all this. He's like, I've got no reason to not believe what you're telling me is true. But even he was getting weary, and he's like, you know, you say we keep doing, why are we keeping doing this? It's not getting you anywhere if you'll keep replaying this. You know, maybe you just need to give up and accept the inevitable.
And then
you can't save everybody.
Ask a question.
Yes.
He asked Quentin why did you believe in me all those times?
Yeah.
And that was what he had to do. And that broke the cycle.
And it was also to accept sometimes there are some things you can't change, no matter how hard you try. And so then Quentin stepped out in front of all the snipers and died. And then Oliver was somewhere else. And then it was like a room, and he walked around. There was no one there.
Well, it looked like his flat, but everything was not there.
Yeah, there was nothing in it.
An empty flat.
And then he turned around, and Lila was there. And she said that this whole thing had been attacked. And he was like, why is it? It's so cruel. Why would the Monitor be so cruel? And she was like, it had to be this way because...
Yeah, she said a great evil's coming, and he felt he'd been messed about. But she told him all the things he acquired have a purpose.
And she said the only way that he could show you what you needed to know was to put you through this, because just telling you wouldn't have been enough, because you're the type of person that actions speak louder than words. So you had to go through this experience, and you had to go on this journey and learn in order to come to the conclusion, rather than someone just telling you or trying to explain it to you.
Where I got confused is because he said about seeing the children and everything. He said, well, that was a gift.
Yes, the gift. Children are a gift.
And then she said, you have to complete your final mission, and she'll see him there. And then obviously when he woke up, he was somewhere else, and Laurel was there.
And then they both realized, we've both been in this thing. We both had this experience. She remembered, like, my thing was I said goodbye to Quentin and stuff. And he's like, yeah, that was your test, you know, like the resolution. And that he basically had to come to terms with the fact that certain things he can't change, including his own death. Like that, you know, he's going to have to die. He was told this. He's clearly subconsciously been trying to find a way around it or to save everything, but sometimes you can't do that. And when that realization hit him, he was able to escape too. And then he's like, we've got one more mission to fulfill. Where are we? We're clearly not in Star City, because they were like in some tent or something, weren't they?
Yeah.
And they go outside.
This is what confused me.
Yeah.
They go outside, and outside are the children and Diggle. And I'm going, but she said the reason he saw his kids was a gift, but why are they here now?
But then they didn't know why they were there either, did they? They were like, they'd obviously been transported there too, because they were like,
where are we?
Where are we? Why are we here? And I knew instantly where they were. like
And
before we got the
They
reveal.
were on the island, weren't they?
And it's like, we're on Liang Yu.
Yeah.
Gone right back to where it all began.
It's like, oh, exciting.
And the camera panned out with the dun 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 dun. And it sort of panned out and you saw the hatch thing where, you know, like the prison thing he built is next to them, and it's just them stood in this clearing, panning out, and then the Arrow logo came up, and then that was the end.
Bum, 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 bum.
And I can tell you, interestingly, tying back into the beginning of all of this, what did we find out at some point throughout the course of the lifetime of Arrow? What did we find out that Lian Yu meant?
Oh, I can't remember.
Purgatory.
Oh my days, they're all dead.
And that's what this episode, the next episode, is called Purgatory.
So they're all dead.
I don't know.
Oh, well, they could be.
But they've all been taken there for a reason.
Yes.
Whatever the final test is. So.
Well, yes, because obviously he was tested there, wasn't he? But this is the test. Can't wait. Oh, yes, very good. Like I said, the whole season leading up to this crisis has been so good with Arrow. It's a damn shame had to lead up to the final Arrow. But I'm glad they're going to go out with a bang, which they clearly are, because if they keep this up, it's going to be an amazing crisis, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they're obviously finishing the crisis, aren't they, Arrow? So, oh, can't wait to see what they got lined up for us. Very good, yeah.
I have a scoop.
Oh.
I've just discovered something.
What?
Technically, this season of Arrow is what they said. It's 8 episodes, okay?
Yeah.
Because they said there was the final season was season 8 was going to have 8 episodes, and that was it.
Yep.
They've added 2 more. There's going to be 10 episodes in total.
Yes.
One of which is going to be within Arrow, but the episode title is called Green Arrow and the Canaries.
Ooh.
So episode 9, which is the episode after the crossover, is going to serve as a backdoor pilot, as they call it, into the new spin-off series.
Yes.
And it looks as if the resolution, the final episode of Arrow, is not going to be the last part of the crossover. After the crossover and after the Green Arrow and the Canaries like spin-off pilot episode that's part of the season of Arrow, which is kind of weird, but there is one final episode of Arrow called Fade Out.
Oh.
And that's going to air at the end of January next year.
Cool.
So we will get episode 8 of Arrow, which is the 5th part of Crisis, on the 14th of January. So that's when, because obviously Crisis takes a break. So we get 3 episodes of Crisis. Then it goes on a break because of Christmas and things like that. Then it comes back with the final 2 episodes, which is Legends of Tomorrow, their part of it. And then the 5th part is the Arrow one.
Yeah.
But then we get the Green Arrow and the Canaries episode. And then after that, we get the actual final episode of Arrow. So I'm happy about that now, because it means
they give it
it will get its own send-off.
Its own entirety, yeah.
Yeah, rather than the send-off being as part of the crossover. So I'm pleased about that.
Oh, wow, that'd be cool.
So that's exciting. So yeah, there you go, exclusive. We thought it was only 8. Technically, it's 8 within the terms of the Arrow show.
Yes.
Because you could say, well, Crisis and the Green Arrow and the Canaries thing are kind of separate entities.
Yes.
So we got 8 Arrow episodes and then 2 other episodes. But so in total, we got 10 episodes.
Cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's
so there we go, guys. So that's our whistle-stop tour of catching you all up and talking about the latest episodes, as well as all our honourable mentions and every other bit and stuff that we talked about at the beginning. Next week, we will only have the Arrowverse stuff to talk about. So we'll have Supergirl will be back next week. So we'll talk about that, and then Flash and Arrow. And we'll probably have a few other bits. Hopefully next week we'll have some of your comments and things like that. So don't forget, go into the comment section and leave your comments on today's episode. And yeah, I mean, it's good a time as any, I suppose, as well, to say, if you've enjoyed this, hit the thumbs up button and leave us a like. That would be really, really appreciated. And also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. the algorithms and all this, how YouTube works. The more numbers we get, the bigger the reach, the more people will hear us, the more people will become aware of us, etc., etc. And also description box, timestamps, as I mentioned at the beginning, links to various things. Follow me on Twitter. Check out my merch shop. 10% discount at the moment if you use the code HOLIDAY10. And also there's other stuff coming, but I'll talk about that next week. We've also got donation mediums, so if you want to help support the podcast, help support the channel, everything like that, there are 2 ways you can do so. You're not obligated to, but they're there. It'd be fantastic and very kind of you if you chose to help. And there's also a link there for Green Man Gaming if you want to buy yourself any digital games. If you use my link, you will help me because it's an affiliate link, so it means that anything you buy, I will get a small commission from the company for you going through my link to get to them. Won't get added to your bill, you don't get charged any more money, the company pays me, but it's a way of you helping me by helping yourself. So you're sort of helping me as an add-on sort of thing. Yeah, so that's all of that. So there we go, Mum. Happy?
Yes, brilliant.
Glad to be back?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah?
I miss my YouTube listeners. I'm sure they've missed me too.
I'm sure everybody will be happy to see Geek Mom back.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
okay.
I think, that's the only other thing. There's no other closing bits?
No.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us, everybody, and hopefully you'll return for the next one. So you all take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye. 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 Bye.